and welcome to Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots. My name is Erika, and I really like to watch horror movies.
My name is Katy, and I really like to overanalyze things. What are we overanalyzing today?
Today, Katy, we are overanalyzing The Purge.
Yay!
Yay! From 2013, directed by James DeMonaco. Beautiful, yeah. And you know what? I would love for you to do the brief synopsis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give us a brief synopsis of The Purge, this world.
Our beloved series.
This world we're about to dive into.
Yes. So, the thing that everybody tends to know about The Purge is that it's a world where in America, in the United States, one day every year, March 21st, all crimes become legal.
Including murder.
So this particular film is like the 5th-ish annual Purge, maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
Depending on how quickly they got the Purge up and running after their experimental Purge.
Right.
And we mostly focus on the Sandin family as they try to just have a nice chill Purge, but their son lets a injured man into their home.
Right.
And the people who are trying to kill that injured man show up, and lots of bad things happen from there.
Hilarity ensues. Yeah. So we are absolutely thrown in immediately into this sort of alternate reality. And I think a lot of people make snide little comments like, but is it an alternate reality? Isn't this the world we live in? It's not. We don't live in this world. Sorry.
Yeah. But we can see the parallels.
We see parallels, absolutely.
The movie is not subtle about its messaging.
No, it's not. But see, here's the thing, is that this first movie comes out in 2013. And, can we all just take a moment of quiet reflection to remember 2013? Because 2013, I was having a great time. Obama had been elected for a second term. We were in college.
Yeah.
Things were great, you know? Yeah. And then it's not really until 2016 that I think the parallels between what the Purge is doing and what our actual lives as people who live in the United States are actually really become super obvious.
Though I think it was a lot of the, I think this movie came out of still the recession of 2008. Yeah. And
a lot of
all of the war, Middle East stuff.
A lot of economic stuff happening.
And, and they mentioned war too. Yeah. I do have a question about in the opening, which will actually get us into our first topic. So our opening caption is that explains the whole thing.
Yes.
Is America, 2022. Unemployment is at 1%. Crime is at an all-time low. Okay. Violence barely exists with one exception. My question is that are we supposed to believe all of that? Or is that...
Right. How are we defining crime?
Yeah.
Who's taking crime rate data?
Yeah.
Right?
How
who's
are we
taking unemployment data?
Yeah, who's defining that data?
Yeah.
Is this information coming from the makers of the movie, or is it coming from the new founding fathers of America, the ruling party in this movie?
I misunderstood because I was when I was watching it, I saw America 2022. Yeah. And I misunderstood. I thought that was the year the Purge started. Was in 2022, and I was just oh my gosh, and then thinking about the world, and I was if the pandemic hadn't happened, would we have a Purge? But that timeline doesn't check out. This fictional kind of third party in U.S. politics, the NFFA, the new founding fathers of America, they rise to power in their timeline around 2014 is what we found. Yeah. So that logic doesn't check out. Yeah. But I was really excited for a second. I was what if the pandemic saved us from a world in which there's a Purge? But no. So immediately there's so much propaganda. We're just inundated with it. From the beginning, for the entire 85-minute movie.
Yeah, and it makes you really wonder, particularly since we're seeing a lot of this film through the eyes of the Sandins, who are this pretty wealthy white family.
Yeah.
How much everybody has bought into this propaganda.
Yeah.
How much they're just sort of going along with it.
Right. Or how much they're even able to have those moments of quiet reflection, right? And actually really think about it, because they do seem media seems absolutely inundated
constantly
but this is the thing, is that something that when we like to talk about the universe this Purge is supposed to be taking place in, it's what's the rest of the year like? The fact is that the Purge, it's not even an entire day. It's actually 12 hours.
It's like a night.
It's a night. It's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
They very specifically want it to happen at night.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not even a whole day. It's literally 12 hours. And so, like, the question that comes to mind that, you know, I think is probably best answered in the TV show, in specifically the second season of the TV show, is like, what's the rest of the year look like?
They do specifically look at it more. But we're going to try to mostly keep to this movie.
Right.
But it's going to be hard not to talk about the rest of it.
Katie and I are both really huge fans of this franchise.
We're kind of like the Purge experts of the world, I think. So
definitely. Yeah, that's definitely not an overstatement.
Because nobody else wanted the job.
Yeah, right. But we were like, we'll do it with a smile on our face.
I do wonder how much we are supposed to take it as a fact of this world that, and I think if we do bring in the other media involved in this, you know, the TV series and the other movies, then we know that violence and crime actually do exist the rest of the year. Absolutely. And like, you know, like the world isn't like hunky-dory, you know?
Yeah.
But I think
there's still a lot of like wealth disparity.
Yeah. But I think we can see already signs of that in just this first one.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I mean, just the fact that the Purge still exists and still continues to exist, like is able to exist because like it only can because there's like this lower echelon of society, such as homeless people, as in this film, for like the privileged people to prey upon. Yeah, that is how the Purge exists.
There's definitely like a really, really defined, established aristocracy.
Yeah. 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 No, and it seems to me that like the people who are most likely to commit crimes, especially murder and violence on Purge night, are the sort of people who we don't really think of as regularly committing crimes, or at least not those kind of crimes, more like, you know, white collar crimes and wage theft and things like that, you know? But, and then like the sort of people who perhaps we think of as like needing to commit crimes because they're like poor and they're unemployed and like because of circumstances, you know, and needing to survive, like they still have to do that year round. Yeah. So like how could the crime rates actually be lower?
Unless we're like reworking a definition of crime.
Right, yeah. And also, how can the economy be better when, again, going to the TV show, we know that things like elderly people are selling themselves on Purge night to be murdered so that their family can survive.
Right.
And things like that. Like,
yeah, so
like there's a reason why people are still robbing banks and it isn't for the fun of it. Like the only crime that is being done sort of like for the fun of it and for the sake of the Purge is the murder. That's the rich, wealthy, mostly white people.
Is the violent crime. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that like I feel like the big part of this movie that everybody hangs on to is just like, oh, one night a year where murder is legal. It's like, no, literally everything is legal. And like, murder is the most extreme understanding of legalized crime, you know?
Yeah.
But there are so many other things, right? Like we see, like when we don't get to see it so much in this movie, but throughout the rest of the franchise, when we're actually like get to see out on the streets during Purge night, like there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
There's so much other crime.
At the same time, I do think murder is the one that they emphasize, the new founding fathers, I mean, and their propaganda. Because like we have the news. Like, we have the news at some points talking about, like, America's problems, and it's always like, the economy was so bad, and there was so much war, you know, which are, like, not individual issues caused by, like, individual aggression that the Purge would help.
Yeah.
Like, those are government choices and, like, systemic issues, and, like, so, like, already we have a problem with what the NFFA is saying. But then the fact that they always emphasize all crimes, including murder. Yeah. Like, they really want you. And the fact that we know from later movies, they actually send out, like, death squads to encourage murder.
Yeah, like mercenaries.
We know that's, like, that is really what the Purge is about, is getting people to commit murders and specifically getting, you know, the wealthy, the privileged people to commit murder, the white people, the people they want in their society to commit murder, because like they don't actually want theft. They don't want like piracy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I don't think they even want assault that like leaves people alive, because then they would have to deal with like handicapped people, and I don't think they want to do that.
No, probably not.
Or like unwanted pregnancies and things. Like they don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, well, and then I know that we're still talking about propaganda, but like this NFFA party is like pretty clearly like Christian nationalists, right?
Yes.
And so you can kind of extrapolate what the rest of this world looks like on not Purge night. Like there's probably not reproductive freedom.
No.
You know? So
yeah, we can talk about some of the weird gender roles that are happening in this movie too.
Yeah. Do you have a particularly favorite piece of propaganda? There's so much. I know there's so much.
I do. I do.
Okay.
Do you remember they have a real criminologist on the, and he's like, he has this thing where he's like, this is what the Purge detractors are going to say.
Oh, yes. I have, in quotes, Purge detractors.
Yes. And he's like, they always postulate that it's really about the elimination of the poor, the needy, and the sick. When it's like, yeah, he's right.
He's right.
He's right. The movie is telling us right away, like, this is what it's actually about, you know, that the Purge is about targeting the people who can't defend themselves because they don't have money.
Yeah.
You know, he calls it the eradication of the so-called non-contributing members of society, ultimately unburdening the economy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of economic things happening
so much economic things happening. And it's like an inherently like anti-socialist system. And the movie is just very straightforward. It's not subtle about it. But what I love about this criminologist is that he doesn't deny it either. No. He just goes on to say, either way, crime is down. The economy is flourishing. Like, so he's like, even if that is true, who cares?
Who gives a fuck? Yeah.
It's working. Yeah. I'm just like, dude.
And that's honestly, that's also when we start talking about these characters, like that really wraps up my feelings about James too.
Yeah.
My favorite piece of propaganda is I think when Mary is like watching TV, you know, when she's home and they haven't locked down yet. It's not quite time, but it's that night, you know.
Yeah.
There's like a doctor on TV, and if you see the little like scroll at the bottom, they're like a doctor from Johns Hopkins University. So like what we consider like a trusted medical source. Like now, if I see something come out of Johns Hopkins University, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a trustworthy source. Like I might give it a little bit of a critical eye, but overwhelmingly, I'm going to be like, yeah, I got you. So we've got this doctor from Johns Hopkins University, like offering medical advice about the benefits of purging and the benefits of having a purge night.
Yeah.
Right. So like, you know, it's coming from everywhere. It's like, who do you trust? Do you trust the government? They'll tell you the purge is a good thing. Do you trust doctors and the medical community? They'll tell you it's a good thing.
And then we also just have like random people on the radio who are like, there was the guy calling into the radio who like wants to have the whole thing about like the poor are the real victims, and the radio guy's just like, we've all got our own opinions. That's what makes this country great.
And you're just like, that's not
as like a weird brush off.
Yeah, that's not a response to that very real concern. Also, I think that there's also a really important aspect of the propaganda and just like the inundation with like pro-purge talking points is that like the purge is also like widely televised.
Yes.
Like people are watching, like that's what Mary says when she's talking to her neighbor. She's like, we'll probably just stay in, watch some purge events. Like what's a purge event? Like how have we monetized the purge itself?
Right.
You know?
And I wonder if they are similar to the, you know, because at the beginning of the film, we get a bunch of little fast clips of different crimes that are happening.
Which I think is like a super, really highly effective way of introducing us into this world. Like, this movie is an hour and a half. Barely.
They fucking do it.
And they pack it in there. Like, when we talk about the characters, I think all of 4 of the main family characters are really well developed for only having an hour and a half with them.
Well, I think part of it, which might be something that people don't like, is that it is actually kind of slow in a way to get to the violence of the central family.
Yeah.
Like it takes half the movie to actually get to the point where like, you know, the boyfriend is shooting the dad and like, you know, the bloody
purgers,
stranger is here and like all that stuff, you know.
And then the purgers and the polite leaders show up. It takes a while.
But that's because it's really setting up this whole world and setting up these characters. And I think I don't think it's slow. I think it's done really well, but I could see maybe that being a complaint.
Right. And there's something to be said about a good slow burn.
I know.
You know?
Yeah, it's setting up. It's like, oh, maybe this family will be safe, but we know they won't. Yeah. so what will happen?
I really, really like just the initial like opening credits with like the CCTV footage.
Yeah.
Of things happening on Purge night, people getting beaten up, like people setting fires.
Yeah.
Murder, you know.
Of course.
And it's just like, yeah, this is probably like everywhere. You know, like the morning news probably covers this the day after. And like honestly, a big question that remains for me is like, what is the day after the purge like?
Yes, that is one thing. Because one thing we do get is because the ending credits are also really good because they have some like radio and whatever newscasters talking and
about the aftermath.
And one thing that they mention about the aftermath math is that once again the markets, the stock market is open and everything's up because of gun sales and like security system sales. And it's like this great thing, and it was like the purge, most successful purge, so many murders, and
it's almost
so much good economy. Yay.
It's almost like we have this world is like a wartime economy when there's no war.
Yeah,
like the war is in the United States.
Yeah, because the goal is, I think, for the NFFA, I think the goal is money.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also genocide.
Right, yeah.
And those are tied together.
And like their understanding, what does the character say? Unproductive members of non-contributing members of society. They'll have their own definition of what a non-contributing member of society is, right?
Yeah.
And create some scapegoats, like everyone always does. Like this isn't specific to the United States, right?
Yeah.
And when, especially in times of economic hardship or something like a pandemic or war, like xenophobia just like runs through the roof.
Yeah.
Right.
And it seems like the NFFA have found a way to like keep that perpetually going.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So of our characters. Yeah. Of the Sandin family. Yeah. How into the purge do you think they are?
Right. Like,
because they do seem like they're set up as a more, I don't know if liberal's the right word to use, but like less bought in than their neighbors.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of asking myself as I was rewatching it. And, I've seen this movie many times, but on the rewatch for this recording, I think I enjoyed it the most, because I feel like with the rest of the Purge franchise, I have felt like the original Purge from 2013 is maybe my least favorite entry.
Yes.
But I didn't really feel that way this time. I was like, man, I'm having so much fun. Like, there's really so much happening in this movie.
No. I definitely enjoyed it more this time than I have in the past.
Yeah, totally. So I was, kind of asking myself, like, to what extent do they really believe in this idea of the Purge, that the Purge actually does a service, know? And I just think, like, with James, Ethan Hawke's character, is like, it doesn't matter. He can't afford not to.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. His wealth, his livelihood is tied into the Purge, tied into selling security systems.
For 12 hours of the year.
Yes. Yeah. And like the big thing that he announces to his family is that like, he had the most sales. His division did the best.
Yeah,
blah,
he's
blah,
getting
blah.
a big bonus.
Yeah. Yay, Purge. Yeah.
So I think,
but at the same time, him and Mary, like, they have that talk with their son Charlie, where he's like, "Why don't you guys purge though? Then if purge is a good thing,
pro-purging,
And he's like, "Oh well, we don't feel the need to.
And if we did, we would."
Yeah. And he's like, "Yeah." But I love the way he said it, because he's like, "And yes, I mean, if we did feel so inclined, then perhaps your mother and I would." He's so like equivocating about
such
it.
a dad,
you know. But at the same time, like, well, on one hand, he's like, "I don't need to do it." On the other hand, he's like, "It works."
Right. Yeah. And I feel like you can kind of see him like waver, like when he's saying this to his son Charlie, it's just like, but are you really buying this, James?
I know. And I think because then he starts to do the traditional talking points where it's like, you don't know how bad it was before. You were a kid, you don't remember the economy. There was so much poverty, there was so much war. And on the same hand, we know that he has that line where he's like, "We were struggling to pay rent, now we're looking to buy a boat." So it's like, was the economy bad? Or was like,
is the
economy actually better now, or is it just you who are in a better position now?
Right, like the economic growth that comes out of a world where there's a purge, right? Like explosion in gun sales, explosion in also like protective equipment, like security systems, things like that. It's like, you're just like in this, like if you step back and think about it, how like explosive this economy is, because like what do we say that like this purge is taking place in like probably the 5th or 6th annual purge. So there is a almost overnight economy growing as a result of the purge. Which James is in the middle of and is benefiting greatly from. So he to me he's a maybe, but like he can't afford not to. And we see that over and over again.
And I think he gets interesting with like how quickly he does actually Like, he does actually kind of back up his words in the sense that he does, like, yeah, I will start being violent.
He does. Yeah. He kills a couple people.
He does. Yeah. And maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But
then, of course, like, another aspect of this film is that, like, it is also essentially a home invasion thriller.
Yeah.
And so...
And he's the dad.
He's the dad in this family whose home is being invaded. So, like, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah. He's gonna...
Yeah.
And then, but that's where we really start to see Mary, his wife, how much she buys in, which I think is not as much.
Much less. Yeah.
I think she's fine saying it and like, oh, I'll put out the flowers with the little flag to show that we're supporters or whatever. And like, I'll talk the talk. But yeah, the moment things get violent, she is out.
Yeah, she's not into it. Well, and then, again, I wonder with this world where the political party with the most power, the NFFA, like, what is it like to be a woman in this world?
Yeah.
Like, does she even still have the right to vote? Like,
I have thoughts about that.
Yeah.
Because I think one interesting thing, like, I do think there's like this increased establishment of like traditional family values.
Very much, yeah.
And we definitely see that in things where it's like, James, he still has to be the man. He gets the gun. He goes out to find Zoe, even though it's like Mary even points out, like, Henry is trying to kill you specifically, James.
Yes.
He's trying to kill you specifically. Yeah. So maybe I should go out and find our daughter. Yeah. Maybe that would be the safer choice. And he's just like, no, because you are a woman and these are my kids and blah.
Yeah.
And so, like, they get really shoved in these, like, domestic roles. But I do wonder...
To their detriment.
I could see how that could benefit the NFFA, but I could also see that being... I don't know, because then you have less women agreeing with the purge, you have less women participating in the purge. So like at a certain point you try to get that propaganda machine going to be like, okay, woman, you got to be the mama bears who like protect your home.
Right.
Like, do you start to build that up? And also, like, it's also important for women to purge. They also have, I mean, in a lot of Christian nationalism and like this kind of Christianity, like, women are full of sin. So like, how don't they also have to purge?
Maybe more so.
Yeah. Though often it's a different type of sin, and this is more like the aggression type of sin. So I don't really know. But I do wonder, and I do feel like in later movies, we actually do see less of a gender divide than we see in this one. Like, we see more women out there purging.
Yeah. I think, and also, again, like, we do want to focus on this film, but like, if we do look at the entire franchise, in election year, there's a woman running for president trying to
and she fucking wins.
The purge. And spoiler, she does win, right?
Yeah.
And then we also see it in the movie The First Purge.
Yes.
Where like there's one woman, and I literally just watched this movie the other day and I cannot remember her name. But yeah, she's like the main, again, like, purge detractor. She's like at demonstrations, like, just speaking truth to power. Like, they're doing this to get rid of our impoverished communities. Like, don't buy into it, don't take their money, so women in this franchise overall do have a voice and a place. But I wonder how they change their propaganda about that, the NFFA, right?
And because, I mean, another interesting aspect of the gender is how much this movie, like, this whole series really doesn't actually want to touch on sexual violence, and how much that would be such a thing in the purge.
It's a thing, and that's another thing.
They touch on it a little bit later in the later movies and in the TV
absolutely.
show.
But again, that's the thing, is like, we get these like probably zombie statistics, right? About like crime being low, and it's like, well, if sexual assault is no longer considered a crime, ever,
right? And I think that is brought up in one of the TV series.
Okay,
I think they do talk about that.
Yeah. Then all of the sudden, like, how much of our like crime rate is because of sexual assault or other kinds of assault. And if that's just not illegal ever, not just on purge night, but literally ever, then the crime rates are going to be low. If less things are illegal.
And especially if we're thinking of these like traditional value things, and it's like the sort of crime that happens in the home. What's happening with that?
Yeah. Listen to our Ju-on episode for more about those thoughts. So I don't think Mary's really bought into it.
I don't either. But I think she was ready to sort of do the wealthy liberal thing of being like, well, I don't necessarily approve of it, but not do anything about it because she knows she benefits from it.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, she is still benefiting greatly from this, right? She's got, like, that's the whole thing, is that her and James just added a whole addition onto their home, right? And like, she has a pretty comfortable life. Yeah.
And as for their children,
Charlie
clearly does not buy in.
He's not buying in.
Which is yeah, he's a child. We want things to be right and just when we're children. Yeah. And for some reason, we're told that the world actually can't be that way and things can't be fair. And it's like considered, I don't know, stupid to keep holding on to the idea that things could be just and good in the world.
Idealistic as an insult, right? Yeah. That's very idealistic, you know. Yeah, I don't know if Charlie's really buying into it. Also, Charlie seems to have a lot of anxiety, which I could imagine, I could see general anxiety just going through the roof, especially around when the purge comes around.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And then Zoe is harder to pin down because she does just sort of seem like teenage girl.
Yeah,
who's like dissatisfied by everything.
Yeah, I think with Zoe and Charlie that they just like don't fully understand.
And how could you?
How deep the tendrils go for the purge, and how could they? They're children, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think they understand well enough to know
and it's like,
what they believe.
And I just sort of think of them growing up with the purge, with it happening around the same time that we grew up with like the internet and technology becoming such a pervasive part of our lives.
Right, yeah.
Where like when we were kids, we didn't have computers.
No, my family, we didn't get internet until 2007, until I was in high school.
Yeah, you know, and I feel like it's kind of that same vibe of like this change happened so... It's weird because it was like really quick but really slow at the same.
But also gradual. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that it was similar like that with the purge, where it's like, oh, these people are coming to power. Oh, they did this weird experiment in this one place, you know, like, oh, now we're doing the purge.
And then
but you're like kind of too young to really be a participant in it. So it's like, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does kind of seem, again, having just watched the first Purge, that's the name of the film, which is really confusing. Because then the first movie of the Purge franchise is called The Purge.
So if you want to watch the first Purge or the first Purge, you don't know.
They mentioned that it's part of in the first Purge where, you know, they're like, okay, so that experiment in Staten Island is over. And like some state governments seemed interested in implementing it the next year.
I know.
So I wonder if it's kind of gradual, like some states got in on it. And like
then it became national.
Enough states ratified it that it became federal.
Yeah, we do know it becomes an amendment. It's like the 28th Amendment or something in the Constitution. So it gets like ratified somehow.
Yeah,
because
countrywide.
Because that's part of what Charlie Rowan does when she becomes president. It's like a big deal that she like repeals the 28th Amendment.
Well, it's fucking hard to repeal an amendment.
I know.
I think we've only ever done it once.
Yeah, honestly. The fact that she was able to do that within like one presidency.
Yeah, 2-term presidency. Yeah. That's pretty intense.
Honestly, Charlie, wow.
Yeah. And then, so that's the family, right? But then, of course, we also have the polite leader. And, like, yeah, he fucking loves the Purge.
He's so excited about the Purge.
Yeah.
I think other than the family and our bloody stranger, who is very much the main victim of the Purge.
Yeah.
Everybody else.
He's basically like a one person, like a personification.
Yes.
of the people who are victimized on Purge.
Yeah. But I think like literally everybody else that we see in this movie is like, Purge, 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 Purge. But I actually think that we're going to be a little weird.
Yeah.
And get into a literary corner kind of really quickly.
It's our podcast. We can do whatever we want.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So literary corner.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this because, you know, you wanted to do your literary corner on like the word purge and what that means. I was like, yeah, I love it because I was thinking that when I was rewatching this. I was just like, the word purge. Interesting word. Choice.
It was very specifically chosen.
So I'm so excited.
I do, like, because in its most basic form, it means to, like, get rid of something. Specifically something unwanted. Yeah. So we can already see how it's being used in this sense of like getting rid of the unwanted people of society,
the non-contributing
or
members,
getting rid of our unwanted violent urges so that we can be peaceful members the rest of the year, you know. It does come from the Latin word meaning to purify, just by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, because isn't that like one of the chants of like purge and purify?
Yeah. Purge and purify, which is like basically the same thing over and over again, but you know, whatever. But I kind of did want to look at more specific uses because purge has... What is your first thought when you think of the word purge?
Honestly, binging and purging.
I know.
Food.
Me too. And actually, when you like just sort of, I always have to stop myself when I want to just see like what fans are saying on like Reddit or Tumblr. And I'm like, the purge. And then it's like, oh.
Eating disorders.
Eating disorders. That's not what I was looking for. Yeah.
Disease, yeah.
But I know. And I wonder about eating disorders in this world where the purge means that. But I mean, another, I think, major use of the term purge is in politics. Where it's like removing, it's An act of removing, often through exile or execution, those the people in power have deemed undesirable. So, like, that's really more like what the Purge in this movie is doing. So, like, for our historical examples, Stalin, known for his purges, especially the Great Purge of, like, the 1930s.
Yep.
He was targeting his political opponents and also, like, artists and intellectuals and religious leaders and certain immigrant groups, which also comes up in the later Purge films.
Also, I mean, if we're talking about the, like, our actual history of purging, Jewish people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throughout history.
In Europe. Yeah.
Yeah. Throughout. Yeah. And actually in Nazi Germany, we also had the Night of the Long Knives, which was when Hitler purged within his own Nazi party. He purged, like, the whole SA brown shirt paramilitary organization, you know? So, like,
in order to, like, solidify
his own power.
Yeah.
So it's like an act of solidifying your own power by getting rid of your political opponents, which we see in, like, the Purge election year. But it's also an act of, like, purging immigrants, purging Jewish people, purging other religious groups.
Homeless people, unhoused people. Yeah.
I mean, in America, McCarthyism, we had, you know, the twins Red Scare and Lavender Scare, which was specifically about getting rid of communist influence and queer people in the government.
And then we also think about in government, and then what do we call it? Like being blacklisted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So even people who work in industries outside of politics.
Yeah, like Hollywood.
Yeah, being affected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I'm just sort of, like, mentioning all this because I think the Purge of this film is, even though they like to put it in all of this language of, like, this very, like, individual getting rid of your own violence to make this a better society, it's like an inherently political action that they're doing.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. We see propaganda in the later films that says, like, purging is American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Purge also has a specific meaning in law.
Oh.
It means to clear oneself of guilt or to no longer be guilty of contempt. Oh. So, like, it's a matter of, like, clearing a contempt charge.
I see.
So, like, if you were, like, supposed to appear at court and you didn't, or like you were supposed to pay a certain amount of, like, child support and you didn't, you would then do, like, an apology to the court and you would pay a fine, and that would be, like, a purge of contempt.
Okay.
But so it's, like, a very kind of specific meaning, but I do think it's interesting just for how it highlights our construction of guilt in, like, American law. And, like, society in general. Like, what is criminal is a decision that society makes and can really easily become uncriminal through, for example, paying money, right? Or by, you know, paying homage to the people in power, by apologizing to the court, you know? Like, it's a transitory state, just like it is in this film, where we have this one night where where nobody is a criminal anymore. Except for I do wonder about actual criminals who are in jail. Are they just released on...
I have a thought about that.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. We'll hold that then.
We'll hold it, yeah.
But yeah, so, like, under certain circumstances, certain crimes can be, like, excused or forgiven. And of course, as we see in this film, crimes are more easily forgiven when they're committed by people with power and money. Yep. Right? Like, that's how the Purge functions.
Or, like, just less prosecuted in the first place.
Well, yeah, that too. And then we can think about, we'll talk about this more when we get more into the polite leader and the bloody stranger, but just sort of the idea about how we have people who are, like, permitted to purge and people who are permitted only to be the victim of purging. Yeah. Yep. And then I think the other big use of Purge, actually found, I'm going to do a big quote from my good old friend Merriam-Webster.
Okay.
Just to get into...
Merriam-Webster's defines.
Yes.
Okay.
But just because I was sort of thinking about, like, the kind of more, like, spiritual, moral ideas of the Purge, because that's obviously a big deal in this film.
Yeah, because this is a Christian nationalist society. That's what's happening here.
Yeah. And Merriam-Webster, I think, just had a good little summary of this sort of idea. It's, in some cultures, a ritual bath or prayer is performed to purge guilt or evil spirits. The Minoans of ancient Crete may have used human sacrifice as a way of purging the entire community, which is fine for the community, but rough on the victims.
Yeah.
Good job, Merriam-Webster.
Yeah.
In many cultures, people periodically purge themselves physically, that is, clean out their digestive tracts by taking strong laxatives. Okay. This used to be a popular springtime ritual, and herbal purgatives were readily available. Yeah. And I especially wanted to highlight that last part because, notably, this is a spring holiday.
It is.
And
the evening of the 21st, March 21st.
Yeah, it's like the vernal equinox.
The 26th. Yeah, it's literally when spring starts.
Yeah, because the flower, the blue baptisia.
Yeah.
Sounds
like baptism.
Well, that's what first got me into it. And it does come from that same idea. It means like to dip or to submerge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But the other name for it is false indigo. So if anybody listening is familiar with false indigo, it is actually like a North American, especially Midwestern plant that blooms in the spring. It's a springtime plant. It's an American plant. Well, it's called false indigo. This isn't really relevant, but it's called false indigo because like indigenous people used it as a dye, but it wasn't, the nice indigo. European indigo.
Yeah,
but it also has historically been used as like a purgative.
Oh, to purge your digestive
system.
Oh.
So I think that's why that flower was specifically chosen.
Really?
It's like, it's a North American flower. Yeah. It's a purgative. Is it purgative or purgative? I hate language. I hate pronouncing things.
But I also
just let me
love
read.
It too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a spring flower. Yeah. So let's talk more about spring.
Here's the thing, right? It's like we're living under this Christian nationalist regime, right?
Yes.
And like what immediately came to my mind when I found out when the Purge was, right?
Yes.
I was like, oh, spring cleaning.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, like getting rid of,
Exactly. And I think that's
we decide we don't need.
That's same with the what I was just saying with that Merriam-Webster quote about like ritual baths and prayers performed to like get rid of our evil spirits and guilt, as like the spring purging ourselves with laxatives in the spring. It's that same cleaning out to get ready.
And it's like that whole idea of like rebirth. Like winter is over, everything's coming back to life.
And to get pagan for a second.
Born, the paganism.
Like, specifically what I thought of right away were all of those like, I think they're called like rising and dying deities, like resurrection deities, and specifically ones associated with spring, like Persephone, who is the deity who goes to the underworld during the winter and then comes back to the living world in the spring. And then we also have that, probably not actually historical because the Romans like to lie a lot about Celtic people, but the idea of like the Wicker Man ceremony, which is the idea that like, somebody was burned alive as a sacrifice. Movie, by the way. To get those ashes, to get the crops growing. Because, again, we end the winter. And then we do something to celebrate the new spring. So we get rid of all of the old and we bring in the new. Spring cleaning.
And, of course, there is obviously the Christ aspect of Christ being resurrected and reborn.
Well, he's also
in the spring, right?
Yeah.
Easter. But that's the thing is that, like, I would think eventually, March 21st, like Easter, that holiday's on a lunar calendar.
Yeah.
But like eventually, if the purge goes on long enough, would the purge ever fall on Easter?
I don't think so. Okay. So I actually looked up how Easter works.
Sure.
It's meant to be held on the first Sunday following the full moon of the spring equinox.
Got it. Okay.
So it's actually done by the equinox.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess there's a chance, but generally the equinox happens on either the 20th or the 21st. And Purge is pretty much always on the 21st. So Easter is always going to be the Sunday after.
Gotcha.
And like,
I think Passover.
I think that timing is very specific.
I think so.
Because that is also an act of out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah.
Clearing out all the old gross people we don't want in our society.
Yeah.
But also, clearing out our sins in the same way that Jesus died for our sins or whatever.
And then was resurrected.
And then we get to start fresh in our new year as a purified person.
If we continue to think about Easter, it's like so many other Christian holidays, like just bastardized paganism.
Right.
So it's like, I feel like the NFFA really had an opportunity here to like divorce Christianity from like the paganism that it's so intertwined with in our reality.
Yeah.
And they don't take it.
I think it's more effective to not, because it shows that you completely wiped out that previous thing because it's yours now.
Right. Yeah. And, anyone like me who would be like, no, well, actually,
Yeah, you're not living in the Purge world. Come on. You're dead by now.
Or I have done whatever I needed to do to survive.
Yeah.
Including purging those thoughts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. See what I did there? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that was actually the extent of my literary corner. It's a very short little tiny one.
Yeah.
Because we have so much to fucking say. But I think it's a good setup for all of our themes that we're going to be talking about, which is that, like, the idea of it being a very political thing.
Yeah.
The idea of it being, this, like, a construct of criminality and, like, what is and is not. And then the idea of all of this religious stuff that I think maybe we should just talk a little bit more about now.
Yeah. Well, and also the fact that so much of these themes are so distinctly American as in from the United States.
Yeah, this whole little category in my notes, I just called it America/Christianity/guns.
Guns. Yeah, oh my gosh, so many fucking guns. Which is so crazy because there's so many ways to kill people.
I know.
If murder is what they want, there's so many ways.
Well, I think that's part of what makes this so American. But should we talk about the Christianity first or the guns first? Honestly, they kind of go hand in hand.
Right, so let's talk about the Christian nationalism first. Can I give my little
your turn to go to Merriam-Webster?
Yeah, it's my turn. This is just straight up from Wikipedia. I don't actually know where Wikipedia got. I need to give Wikipedia money. So just super quick, let's define nationalism. Nationalism is an identification with one's own nation and support of its interests, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. Mm-hmm. Specifically, in this case, in Purge world, that is the people within the nation being used as scapegoats for the government's interest.
Yeah,
and then,
absolutely.
So we just make it Christian nationalism by having one of the interests of the nation be Christianity.
Yes.
Basically. So Christian nationalism there's all kinds of religious nationalism. Like there's Hindu nationalism, there's Jewish nationalism, there's so it's just religious nationalism specifically for Christianity, in which the end goal is to achieve an absolute Christian theocracy within the society and government, right? So separation of church and state, not a thing here, right? And the idea, especially for American Christian nationalism, is that America as a country, the U.S. as a country, is defined by Christianity.
Yes.
Like its roots in Christianity.
And it sure is.
It's a thing.
That's just true. Yeah. But it's especially true in this Purge world.
Yes.
Where we always have, like in that opening caption, it ends with, "Blessed be the new founding fathers for letting us purge and cleanse our souls. Blessed be America, a nation reborn." And it's like, it's that very specific American Christian nationalist thing of like kind of couching ourselves in this religious and specifically Christian language.
Yes.
But like our actual faith is towards America itself at the same time.
And then doing the most un-Christian things.
I mean, just, like, thou shalt not kill and all that.
If
but
these people knew fucking anything about the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think even so much, like so much American Christianity is used to that sort of hypocrisy.
Very much.
Like, because Christianity in this sense is our American nationalism, is our Christian, like they are in service of each other.
Yeah.
And so if we need to wiggle one of them to make the other one fit better, then we'll wiggle that one, is definitely how it works.
Yeah, it's so
in this film.
It's so interesting because, like, what I understand about the figure that is Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And, like, what I understand of his messaging is, like, Jesus is a fucking hippie, dude.
Yeah.
Like, he's, like, destroying banks and stuff, right? You know, like, he's hanging out with sex workers and poor people and people who are disabled. Like, Jesus is super chill.
Yeah. It's all very not Purge.
Yeah, very unpurge. Yeah. But that's when the nationalist part of it comes in.
And that's why, so every purge can end with, "May God be with you all."
Right.
Because we're taking the moral high ground.
Yes.
I think one of my favorite kind of like images in the film for this specific idea is before the neighbors because the neighbors come in and like save the family.
Yeah.
But it's because they want to kill them.
Yeah.
And like, but before they get around to killing them, they all like stand together and pray, kind of like they're saying grace before a meal.
Yeah.
And it's like they're blessing America and they're blessing the NFFA.
And we also see that with the purgers. Like, they are kind of taking this, and what the polite leader says is like, it is almost like a religious experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's meant to be, or at least the NFFA is using religion to fuel their goals with the purge. Because then we even have that news report over the credits in the end talking about how like there are hundreds gathered in Times Square doing a public vigil because they're thanking all of those who were killed last night for their sacrifice. Yeah. And it's, so it's this idea of like, we can make this feel okay to us by making this something that is like religiously right, and therefore it is morally right, without actually thinking about it. Yeah. And without actually, thinking about Jesus.
Actually taking into account what Christ actually taught.
And beyond that, without actually thinking about what we would feel good doing and like what we think is morally right.
Right, yeah.
Because like, you know, we can have Charlie save this kid who, you know, quote unquote doesn't know better, saving somebody who's in danger, and his whole family is just like, no, that was the wrong thing to do. That's not what you do. Like, it's like a moral failing that this boy did when it was like clearly the right thing ethically. Because it's so corrupted. This idea of Christianity, Christian nationalism has so corrupted the morals of this society.
But, so let's talk about guns. You want to talk about guns?
Yeah, because I feel like that's also, in a weird way, tied into the Christian nationalism stuff, and definitely tied into the idea that this is a very U.S. American movie.
That the Second Amendment, that all of the amendments are like Americans' God-given rights.
Yes.
Including the Second Amendment. Like God wants me to have guns.
Yes. And I just really got that in like the opening montage that you were talking about that you really like. Most of those montages include guns. Most of them. Not all of them. Like occasionally we'll get like a bat or a fist or something or like, you know, just blood and we don't really know what's going on. But like it always goes back to guns. In a way that just feels very preoccupied with gun violence in the way that it only could be if it was made in America.
In the United States.
But and it goes back to the idea of how like we set out our special blue flowers with our little American flags in the vase too, because this is about celebrating what makes America great, you know, and like gun violence or, excuse me, the right to bear arms is like what makes America great. So then we have even this sort of like more bougie liberal family having this full case of guns, including like an assault rifle or whatever. I don't fucking know how guns work. I think it's a rifle or shotgun or whatever. But like the sort of family who you wouldn't think would normally have like any guns in their house, like maybe one just for protection if they really felt like they needed it, but like certainly not that kind of
which is what happens like on Purge night after they lock down. James does get a gun. Just like a little revolver.
Just for protection. And then he goes back later for the big gun.
The good shit.
But then because then it becomes this thing in the way what I'm talking about it being tied into the Christian nationalism. We have like the neighbor Grace talking about how like we'll be better people. You'll sacrifice yourselves to make this world better. And like it's time for us to do our duty as Americans, she says right before she is going to kill some children. Right. And like that is what your duty as an American is to like kill children.
It's such like this weird amalgamation of collectivism and individualism. It's like I'm doing it to purge myself as an individual, which will then serve
the whole society,
our collective nation.
There's that one guy who's on the radio who's like, I lost my 2 sons last night. I was a proud American, but not anymore. This country has taken everything from me. And it just really, do you know that it's like a tweet or a Tumblr meme that's like, I never thought leopards would eat my face, sobs woman who voted for the leopards eating people's faces party.
Pretty much.
It's just like, it felt very like, oh, I was a proud American and I totally supported gun violence and I totally supported, you know, the purge until
I got
I personally was affected by it. And now I'm not a proud American anymore. And like, it's the country's fault.
I have it right here, like what the rules are on Purge night with weapons.
Oh, sure. Weapons. Yeah. Because I don't really...
Right. So it's kind of confusing. So I actually found some of this information from a Cinema Blend article. So thank you, Cinema Blend. Because they say weapons of class 4 and lower are cleared for usage on Purge night. So only class 5 weapons are outlawed. So apparently weapons have 5 classes. Class 5 weapons are most likely to like include explosives or like any other kind of weapon of mass destruction. And so according to the Cinema Blend article, I said like so that the carnage can be kept nice and personal. Right? Even though we do see in the movie The First Purge, we do see people using explosives.
But to be fair, that was before I think all the rules were fully established.
It was The First Purge. Yes, absolutely.
And I feel like I saw somewhere else talking about how another thing that then would be outlawed would be like biological weapons.
Also,
I guess that goes with the mass destruction thing.
Also, by the way, if you break any of the rules of Purge night, do you know what the punishment is?
It's death.
Specifically, death by hanging.
Oh.
So we don't really, we know that like class 5 weapons would be like weapons of mass destruction, bioweapons, nuclear weapons, that kind of thing. So basically anything lower than that is like good to go.
Yeah.
Right.
So you get out your flamethrower. Yeah.
Like there's people with tanks.
Yeah, which is wild.
Yeah. Again, like what is this economy?
I know. Buying all these tanks, don't got money for food.
Yeah, right. There's like automatic weapons, machine guns.
I was going to say, how are the farms surviving through all this violence? But there are less people out where the farms are. They're probably not seeing a lot of violence.
Right. That's another aspect of this entire universe in this franchise. Is just like, okay, so we've really well established what like cities and suburbs are like.
Yeah.
But what is rural?
Which I guess is sort of what the Forever Purge tried to touch on a little bit, but not enough.
I don't think it
because
really
then they went
that.
To the city pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah. Because there's just so much to explore in this world.
There really is.
Which is why I think it's a series that would really benefit from having even more writers involved in it.
Yeah.
Which is what happened with the Forever Purge and the first Purge, is that those were different people really involved in it.
I think DeMonico was still like a producer. Like
yeah.
Producer.
He was still involved.
I think he also wrote some scripts, but he hasn't directed the last couple.
Yeah.
What I think is very apt criticism of this film is that we've got this world where there's a purge, and like we immediately understand that this is to target people who are unhoused, people of color, all that stuff. And we focus on this like white nuclear family.
They're like the most bougie family you could possibly find.
Because we have this like white nuclear family. We have a mom and a dad.
They're
and
the
a son
sort of
and a
people.
daughter.
They're the sort of people who have a fridge with a little wood panel in front of it, so it looks like all of their other cabinets, but you open it and it's a fridge. That is like ultimate peak bougie to me.
Oh, wow, okay.
I'm so wealthy.
I'm not even aware of such a thing.
Yeah.
So that shows you where I'm at. Yeah.
Oh, God. Also, the other peak bougie part was also when they were having dinner, and they're like, oh, this was really good. And she's like, not one carb.
And I was like, Mary, that's literally impossible. It's literally impossible. But okay.
You buy into that, girl.
Okay, girl. Yeah. So we've got this married couple, James and Mary. Mm-hmm. And obviously, James is the breadwinner, right?
Yeah.
And
Mary's the housewife who's wearing heels for a long time.
Right, yeah. So,
I think every time except for when she's on the treadmill working out, because she's got to keep it fit for her husband.
She's got to keep it fit, but also I could imagine her, because like that's after lockdown, right? Like I could imagine she's having some nervous energy and like running on the treadmill for a half hour, like a really healthy way to like shake off that nervous energy.
That's true.
And we see her have like a glass of red wine with dinner, but like we don't see her.
Yeah, actually she's handling things
like we do with housewives in these kinds of movies where like we might see them like take a pill or like drink a significant amount. Like she has one glass of wine with dinner, and so does James.
She seems like satisfied with her role.
Yeah.
With her very traditional gendered role, where she is like and she actually also does seem to have a good relationship with her kids.
She does,
which often I feel like in these movies maybe she wouldn't, or there'd be some tension there.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of tension between James and his daughter Zoe, but that's mostly just where the boyfriend is involved.
And I think there's because I think once we meet Mary, we've met Mary, and then like the creepy robotic doll comes in, right? And Mary knows that it's Charlie's, right? And she yells at it like it's Charlie, right? And so like, okay, so you know that your kid's weird, but you don't seem that phased by it. You just don't like it when it sneaks up on you and scares you. That's cool.
Yeah. Which seems like a cool supportive mom. I mean, like, her son made this cool electronic creepy thing.
It's like that's
pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's also really supportive when he tells his story. She's like, "Oh, that's sweet, honey."
That's sweet, nice. Yeah.
She's like very supportive.
That's nice, honey. Go wash up for dinner, kind of thing.
Yeah. But they're just so rich.
They're so rich, and it seems like only until very recently have they become so rich. Like they were at least it seems like they've been pretty well off for a while. Mm-hmm. But then like that's what happens, with the neighbors at the end, right? They're upset. They're like, you guys made so much money off of us, and like there is like this weird class thing.
I know.
Like, you guys are like, they all live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, so you're all doing great.
Yeah, and they're like, you're with their expansion, their house expansion. They're like, you're flaunting your wealth in our face, and like, you got that money from us.
And it's like, yeah, okay, and you got that money in exchange for a service. Like your house is safer on Purge night.
Yeah,
I don't know what else. That's how the fucking works.
Supply and demand.
Fucking like what?
So
though also, this isn't really related, but also, okay, so they're wealthy enough to have like they're looking at boats. They're spending part of Purge night looking at boats, which is just like, wow, that is a very different Purge experience for most people, I imagine.
Yeah.
But also, you never thought to build like a safe room? Like a panic room?
Seriously.
Where's your fucking
security room?
Yeah, where's your fucking panic room?
Seriously.
Anyway.
Yeah, buy that instead of a fucking boat.
Yeah. But I guess they're pretty new to being wealthy. They haven't quite figured out how to be
nouveau riche.
Yeah. They're like, we need a boat, but we don't need a security system that works.
No, because and also like, don't they live in a gated community?
I think, or they at least live in a very nice. I mean, he has that thing about like things like this aren't supposed to happen in our neighborhood. And like when he does hear gunshots, he's like, oh, that's probably just someone, firing off a few rounds before they go hunting.
Yeah.
He's not like he's like, things don't happen in our community, because he seems, even though he won't like out loud acknowledge it, he seems to, at least in the back of his mind, be very aware that like even if he would never say, oh yeah, the purge is definitely because we want to eliminate all the poor people.
Yeah.
He's very aware that the purge does not exist to target wealthy people.
Yeah.
He's like, I am safe because I am wealthy.
And I have this super fancy security system that looks intimidating, and the look of it is enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's just like how they all like wish their neighbors like, have a safe night.
Yeah.
Which is like a funny thing to wish if you're somebody who like agrees with the purge.
Yeah.
Because you should be wishing for violence.
Yeah.
You should be wishing for an unsafe night. But like, they know that the purge isn't really for them or about them.
Yeah, that they're the ones who are probably going to get through purge,
which is like
the safest.
Which is like not how the purge, according to the propaganda, is supposed to be functioning. You know what I mean? Like, it feels very like, not to get ACAB right now, in a movie that specifically does not have police. Like, specifically,
That's
the cops
true.
are
There's
not a
no
presence.
law enforcement.
They are not allowed to go out and be cops.
Law enforcement in the entire franchise is pretty
because
lax. Yeah.
The police, they all shut down.
There's no emergency services.
Yeah. But it reminds me of how some people talk about, like, the police system, how it's like, it's meant to defend everyone, but like most often it doesn't, or like it cares more about like property than it does about people.
Yeah, definitely profit over people.
Yeah.
In this world.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about in our world, like how people will talk about the police that way sometimes, and they'll talk about how like the system's broken and we need to like fix the police system, whereas other people will say no, actually it's functioning exactly as how it was intended to function. I feel that way about the purge.
Yeah,
where it's like, is this a broken system not functioning how it's supposed to be functioning, or is it functioning exactly as it was intended, or do you just buy all the propaganda and assume it is actually working right?
Yeah, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah. It's like I feel very that way about the purge, and I think there's like a dissonance where James sort of knows that in the back of his mind, that things are functioning how they are meant to be functioning,
and
even though it's not what the propaganda says is supposed to be happening.
Yeah, and he is in the lucky few who is actually greatly benefiting from the system functioning the way it's supposed to be functioning.
Yeah, the polite leader even has that line where he's like, your home tells me you're good folk like us.
Yeah.
He refers to them all as the haves.
Yes.
Versus the have-nots. Yep. And then he talks about like, I see your blue flowers. I know you support the purge. So it's like, okay, yeah. James and Mary are like complicit in the purge as much as they want to say that they like aren't.
Or don't feel the need to quote unquote celebrate the night.
Right.
Yeah.
And then of course when James does have the opportunity question mark to celebrate the night, he like takes to it really quickly.
He does. Yeah. He kills a lot of people.
I know. Yeah. And I was just sort of like, oh, it's almost like maybe like circumstances could bring this level of violence out of anybody.
Yeah.
So like the way to stop violence in our society is to eliminate those circumstances instead of making a whole night devoted to creating those circumstances. But I don't know. I don't run the country.
Yeah, right. I'm not a member of the NFFA.
Yeah.
So James, really early on in the movie, like, I feel this with all of the characters, like some of their dialogue, like so much of their dialogue is just like such a rich text.
Yeah.
Like one of James's first lines is, traffic is worse than last year. And then that kind of made me wonder, what is traffic like on Purge night?
Yeah. Because people are trying to get to their safe spots.
Because they work. James was at work.
Yeah.
Charlie went to school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we see them still in their school uniforms.
Oh, yeah, Zoe's in her school uniform, which is, like, that is honestly, of all of the, like, ridiculousness of the concept of this film, Zoe staying in her Catholic schoolgirl uniform for more than 2 minutes after she gets home. I'm not buying it.
I used to think that way.
Yeah.
Until I started tutoring
Catholics, people
private school kids.
Yeah.
Every time I went over, it's been like hours since they got out of school. And they're still in their fucking uniforms. I don't know what that fucking is.
Huh.
It's fucking wild.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I used to think that too when I saw her. I was like, this is unnecessary. We just want a girl in a school uniform. Gross. But like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some girls be that way.
Okay. Well, I can also like imagine just being lazy.
Yeah. But like, and like not wanting to dirty more clothes.
Sure. But yeah, like the minute I get home, my work clothes are off.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But we're not 15-year-old girls anymore.
Yeah, I'm an adult. Yeah.
So
anyway. Right. So that was so interesting to me. Like traffic is worse than last year.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you work in an industry that only exists because the Purge exists. Like, what do you feel is like the reason why traffic is worse, you know?
Yeah.
Say more on that.
Maybe connect some dots here. And Mary has that line too where she's like, what happened to us? And it's like, maybe this thing called the Purge?
Yeah.
Maybe the Purge happened to us? Maybe the Purge creates violence in people?
Yeah.
Maybe that's like, it's not a release for like existing violence. It's like creating violence, maybe?
More violence? Yeah.
Maybe.
And we already talked about this. He gets an award for selling the most. What he gets an award for and a monetary bonus, is selling the most upgraded security system. So it's not new security systems, the upgrades, right?
Yeah.
Because you gotta upgrade, right?
Yeah.
Planned
obsolescence,
kind of thing.
Though I also think probably as Purge progresses, and actually as we see this in the movie, the wild shit people get up into on Purge night progresses.
Yes.
Like I imagine the first couple of Purges, nobody had fucking tanks.
No. Yeah.
And then suddenly they're starting to get tanks. You got to upgrade that
exactly.
shit.
Well,
you got to be flamethrower proof.
That's the thing is like when the Purgers show up at their door.
Yeah.
And like those Purgers have more money than them. So like what you need in your security system is enough to combat whatever the biggest offense mechanisms are going to be, right? Like you need to,
But of course they think, and I think all the neighbors think, and I think this is part of why they're so upset about having spent all this money on their security systems, they think they don't actually really need their security systems because they think violence like that doesn't happen in our neighborhood. Yeah. We don't need to worry about that kind of thing in our neighborhood.
And like, again, what is this economy? What an astoundingly profitable industry that is less than a decade old for the United States economy. For, again, 12 hours for an entire year.
But to be fair, you can use a security system all year, but you shouldn't need it because crime is down. Because we purged it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. Do you think they lock their door any other day of the year?
God, I hope. I don't know.
Crime is down. Why would you need to?
And they live in that neighborhood. Why would they need to? Yeah, I don't know. I also, you had mentioned this already. Another thing that James says that really like gets me is the term going hunting.
Oh yeah.
What are you hunting?
That's different than
people.
Yeah, that's different than like purging our aggressions. Like that makes it sound more like a game in the way that rich people who go hunting, it's more of a game for them than it is like
something
people who hunt for food. Like that's not what it is.
Yeah,
it's a game.
So can I ask you, does James like basically admit that their top of the line security systems are basically for show?
Well, he says they're 99% accurate.
Yes.
I mean, effective.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, fair.
Yeah.
You can't plan for everything.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
And I think he must have some faith in them if he has his family protected by them. But I also think he feels like he's protected by being in a nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think it is just more bougie bullshit.
And that I think he even says like the optics of it, like seeing.
Yeah, he does. He mentions that
house.
It looks like really good.
Enough to keep people away.
People aren't going to, and that's like so much of like deterring like actual theft.
Yeah.
Is just sort of like, does it look like it'll take too long? Does it look kind of difficult?
Yeah.
If it's just sitting there and you can just take it. Sure,
are there like CCTV cameras around?
Yeah.
Do they even work?
So many CCTV cameras in like our real world that like just don't actually work.
Yeah.
But they just deter theft because.
Or like erase the footage.
Yeah.
Very rapidly.
Yeah. But it's because, it's just, it's deterrent.
Yeah.
But it's not actually doing anything because I don't think he thinks he really has to worry about it.
Yeah. Well, and then when Mary is asking him like, okay, so like, are we okay? And he was like, well, it works 99% of the time. Like nothing's 100% effective, and like these crazy rich kids probably have access to something that can take down the security system.
Because we never
we were not expecting this.
Yeah, we weren't expecting crazy rich kids to target us.
Exactly.
On Purge night when everything is legal. And
and the only reason they're being targeted is because their son Charlie did the right thing.
Yes, which to them is like the wrong thing.
The wrong thing.
Yeah, it's...
Well, and then I think, I mean, we've mentioned, because it's so obvious that there is absolutely like a racial and racist element to the Purge, right? And so we see this with James because the bloody stranger they let in is a black man.
Yeah.
And it seems like he doesn't really agree with like what is obviously the racist undertones of what the polite leader is saying.
Yeah.
But again, like with the Purge in general, like he just benefits too much. He's complicit in the system because he's one of the few who benefits from it and his family does. So like while he might not necessarily agree,
he's not going to do anything to change it. Yeah, I could see him not doing anything to like necessarily go out of his way to like support, you know, like he's not going to go out hunting or whatever, but he's not going to do anything to stop it.
And then when push comes to shove and the polite leader is like, it's either him or your family.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well.
Okay, then I'll go get him, right?
Yeah.
You should do that.
Yeah.
The fucking polite leader. I love him so much. Yeah, and then, Mary, just in general, seems to just have some nervous energy the entire time. And I really love her role in the end of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, she's sick of it. She's had enough.
Yeah.
And she's like, I swear to fucking God, like, we are going to sit in silence for the remainder of this evening, right? And it's just like, man, you know, if there were, you know, more women in positions of power, maybe we would all be like, okay, we're just gonna, we're gonna simmer down.
I don't know, because she was going against another woman who seemed to be in charge of their neighborhood.
That's true, yeah.
Targeting them.
Some clout in the neighborhood,
and we know that the Purge was started by Marissa Tomei, so...
This is true. Well, she's...
So maybe not white woman.
Kind of not really, though.
She was actually surprised by the results.
Yeah, and then she gets murdered by the NFFA. Oh my gosh, spoilers for the entire franchise. Good stuff.
Should we talk about how Charlie does seem to be a traumatized child?
I think I'd like to talk about Charlie and then Zoe. What stood out to me immediately when we are introduced to Charlie is that he is literally seeing the world through a screen.
Yeah.
When we meet him. Like he's in his little safe spot in his little corner.
Oh, I want to talk about that safe spot.
Yeah. And he's got this little robot.
Yeah.
To like
go be in the world with that.
World for him.
Yeah. So that he can feel safe, but still a part of the world.
Yeah. But again, he's got the glasses on that are literally screens.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's only seeing his world through a screen when we meet him. Yeah.
And I love the shots we get of his little hideout. Did you catch all of those like drawings that he has?
No.
He has some like one that just sort of says the Purge and kind of like bloody, drippy writing. And then there's like a knife. And then there's someone curled up on the ground who's like either dead or just like afraid or something.
Yeah.
And I just feel like these are all the sort of signs that we're like told to look out for in children.
Right.
Because it's like a sign that maybe a child's being abused or something.
Right.
Which just says to me that the Purge is abuse, you know?
Yeah. And I do wonder, we can talk about this when we talk about Purge law, is like, what are the rules for children during the Purge? Mm-hmm. Right?
And I think the series as a whole goes back and forth on that.
Yeah.
But definitely in this one, at least, children are free game.
Yeah, because he is also, him and Zoe are kind of members of this first generation growing up with the Purge as just like a part of their lives, right?
Yeah. And like, what do you do as a child growing up who maybe had the first couple of years with a different idea about morals?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're being told by your parents, the people who are like supposed to be primarily teaching you your morals or whatever, that they're murderers. Or like that they aren't murderers, but they're supposed to be. And they're not doing it. And like they're telling you it's good, but they're not doing it. Like, how do you live with that dissonance, I guess? Which really brings me to that story he wrote for his English class.
Tell us about the story he writes for his English class.
He says, in English, I wrote a story about a man whose love is so powerful it can kill people. So he cuts out his own heart. To which Mary says, that's so sweet. And like, Mary, no.
Mary, no. Yeah.
Like, yeah, because he has this society that's telling him this night where we are going to like tear each other apart is for the good of us all. And it's like a really good thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's so... Like, yeah, your love is so strong that it's necessary to kill people. Mm-hmm. Or like, I'm killing people, and so I need to purge myself of that by cutting out my heart, by killing myself. Or like, how do you... he's just getting so many mixed messages.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And he's how old is he supposed to be? Like 12?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my gosh,
and just his way of constructing it
brain. Yeah.
as this guy whose love is so powerful that it kills people.
Right, because that's what hate.
Yeah, because that's what he sees the purge, or at least that's what the propaganda is trying to tell the world that the purge is.
Yeah.
But he still can't quite reconcile himself to that. So he's like, so instead of killing people, I'm going to cut out my own heart. I'm going to like self-annihilate instead of participating in it, which is just a really interesting take for him to have.
And then do you remember what Zoe says?
Yes.
Very interesting response from a teenage girl.
Yes.
Because she says, why doesn't he cut off his penis?
Yeah.
Right? And then of course mom and dad are like, hey, talking about penises at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot right there. That's a lot.
Right. No, because it tells us right away that, well, sexual violence is still something that exists in this world. If that's where she is like locating
love.
And violence, right? That it's killing people.
Yeah.
Like, so it's interesting that as the series like almost completely avoids sexual violence, but like we still get hints of like, oh, it's happening, because otherwise this girl would not be reacting to the story in that way.
And we do see female characters being threatened with sexual violence, but they always get out of it in the nick of time.
And just like the same time with the kids, where we're not really sure. We can like see kids get threatened, but we never actually see kids get hurt.
Yeah.
Or even hear about kids getting hurt in the Purge.
I mean, just in general, in like horror films, kids are still a bit of a taboo.
Yeah. And I could see a film like this wanting to focus on their political message and the schlocky violence stuff and not really get into like the sexual violence.
Right, because again,
that's just a different message.
Christian nationalists are going to have this like puritanical vibe.
Yeah.
And so like James and Mary are like, oh, no, let's not talk about penises at the dinner table. Like James and Mary, penises are anatomy.
Yeah.
That like literally half of the global population has.
Yeah. And if your daughter is feeling a way where like she sees penises as a threat, let's unpack that.
Let's unpack it, yeah.
And let's unpack your son's story more.
Yeah.
Because they don't even realize how many mixed messages they're sending him, I don't think.
No.
My favorite image for that is when they have him holding the flashlight so they can see to tie up the bloody stranger, but they're telling him to not look at it. And it's like, you want him to show him the light on him, but you don't want him to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, how is he supposed to?
And then there's another really interesting aspect of that scene. I think it's the same scene.
Yeah.
Where
they're kind of torturing the bloody stranger.
Yeah, they're like beating him up, and Mary is doing it.
Yeah, she gets into it because I think James is sort of holding him down.
Right, yeah. And James is like, yeah, Mary, keep doing it. And Charlie is like, Mom, stop. Mm-hmm. But she doesn't listen to Charlie.
No.
She listens to James.
Even though she clearly doesn't want to be doing it and clearly thinks it's wrong.
Yeah, she continues to do it.
She doesn't. Yeah, and so now these kids are watching their parents torture this person. And I wonder how much they feel responsible for it, too. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, because Charlie is the one who let the bloody stranger.
It's true. He's the one who lets him in. Yeah.
And the reason why it reaches this point is because Zoe gets held hostage briefly by the bloody stranger.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Which is just, just going to say another example of a white woman's, vulnerability getting used to justify violence against a black man. But, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they must feel some amount of guilt for it. And they could still be like, stop. And like their parent and Mary like wants to feel that guilt but can push it away.
Yeah.
And James is just like, nah, man. Until finally he does. And I'm not really sure what makes James change his mind about it.
I mean, maybe it's like a multitude of factors.
I mean, yeah, it's just like
everything that goes down over
Charlie
the course of that
clearly
evening.
Isn't down with it.
Yeah.
His wife says she isn't down with it. And then Zoe kind of comes to, the person that he's kind of maybe most doing this violence for, because she was the one who was threatened and like knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
She comes to and she's like, nothing is ever going to be okay again.
Yeah.
This is never something that we're going to get over.
Yeah.
And that seems to maybe be his turning point.
Yeah.
When he loses her too.
Right. Well, and then there's also the initial violence with her boyfriend, Henry, that Zoe and James are wrapped up into. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we get into Zoe?
No, I want to say one more thing about Charlie.
Okay.
He makes a mention because he talks about a story he wrote, right, but he also says, because like they're around the dinner table talking about their day like it's any other fucking night.
Yeah.
And
which is wild.
One thing Charlie says is they talked about the history of the night in school. And I'm just like, what history do they teach about the history of Purge night in your school, Charlie?
I imagine they teach there was so much poverty. Yes, yeah, it was so crime, bad. The crime was so high. We had to go to war so much. Yeah. And then the new founding fathers of America arrived.
Right. I have a feeling it's probably something like that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised even if Marissa Tomei from the first Purge gets a write-up as like a martyr or like something like, oh, she had this brilliant idea and was taken from us too soon, and if only she could see her legacy. Yeah. And shit like that.
Something like that, yeah.
God.
Yeah, that's probably what it looks like, you know, and it's so interesting
because you got to start that propaganda.
Yeah, you got to start it early. You got to get them early.
That is something I wonder about Charlie, because I was like, I cannot imagine a world where he doesn't grow up being very like anti-Purge. And like maybe even an anti-Purge activist, because we know that those exist in later films.
A Purge detractor, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's only like, 10, 12, whatever. Yeah. He's got so many more years of propaganda ahead of him.
Yeah.
Like...
And, you know, like, America is so good at radicalizing white boys.
Yeah.
You know, like...
That it makes you really wonder about him. And, like, now he's experienced this trauma on Purge night. Is he going to think the way to resolve that is by going out to Purge? Because we see that later with other white boys in this series.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's just interesting because, you know, I've taught history classes before, and like the like eternal struggle of teaching history is like, you know, whose history are we teaching?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And like, are we getting multiple perspectives? Are we viewing it through a lens of like moral relativism, you know? And so, yeah, when he says that, I'm like, oh, I would love to know what you learned at school.
Let me just sit right in. And, that would have been a great little cold open for the TV series.
Yeah, like what's
a moment in school.
Like? Yeah,
that would have been so good.
Okay, I'm ready to talk about
Taken from Us Too Soon. That TV series.
Was it?
It had moments.
It had a rough start.
It had Purge law.
It did have a good Purge law. It did have some very good moments. The season 2 was significantly better than season 1.
Yeah. Horrible biphobia.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
okay.
Let's talk about Zoe.
Just immediately, how does she meet Henry? And how much older is Henry supposed to be than her?
Okay, so I have so many problems with their relationship.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't even know where to begin. But yeah, I don't know how much older we're supposed to think he is. And I don't actually know how young we're supposed to think she is. I was thinking of her as like 15 or 16.
Yeah,
And if he's like 18, it's very possible that they went to the same school.
Yeah. That maybe
like when I was 15,
last year.
I dated, when I was a sophomore, I dated a senior.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like that could be possible. But at the same time, like the way he talks, the fact that her dad is so, the fact that, he could have been in a school uniform and then we would have known that they were like, he was like maybe just 18 and she was 15 and like that would have been not. But of course, we're in California and they don't have Romeo and Juliet laws, so even that still would have been illegal.
Uh-huh.
Which makes you wonder again about crime rates being down. Like, are they counting that crime? Are they counting?
Yeah.
You know?
And just like, what is she doing with this guy?
I know. Well, because he has that line where he's like, he's like gonna confront her father, and he's gonna say, "I'm gonna explain. Sure, I may be older, but you're also very mature. Yeah. So boy age math. Difference is not a
boy math. Yes,
it is the classic thing that they say. You're so mature,
which is a term I learned like a week and a half ago. Boy math. Yeah. Well, you're mature for your age, so it's not actually that big of a deal.
But it's like no, also, actually, it is technically criminal, but whatever.
Like, and also because after they've shut down, and she's like alone in her room listening to music, right? And then Henry shows up and he's like, I just want to talk to your dad. It's like, Zoe, I know you're young, but like you have to know he's there to shoot your dad.
I don't. There's so many things about all of their scenes together that are just like the biggest red flags. Like even if this wasn't a horror film.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she's like, you can't be here right now. And his response is, aren't you happy to see me?
No.
Like that's a bad dynamic.
Yeah. Set the boundary, Zoe.
The fact that he on Purge night decides to scare her by covering her, coming up behind and like doing that cute little like, who is it thing on Purge night?
Nope.
Like, dude.
And the fact that like he hid in their home while they locked down.
While they were having their dinner and he was just like hiding there.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't listen to her at
No.
all. She's like, I don't actually want you to confront my dad. I don't want you to talk about this. That's not what I want to happen.
It will make it worse. Yeah.
And he's like, nah, it's cool.
It's cool.
I got this. And it's like, dude, at least ask your girlfriend before you go to try to murder her father.
Right.
Like, where is the chivalry?
Right. Yeah. Well, and immediately it's like, Henry, what did you think was going to happen after you shot Zoe's dad?
I know.
He's not thinking it through. Did you just think that like that everything would be great and you and Zoe could be together forever and you could like continue to push her boundaries?
We'll probably talk about this more later when we talk about the polite leader, but like it's such a white boy entitlement thing where he specifically is like talking about her dad. He says he cannot forbid you from seeing me.
Yes.
Like he just assumes that he is in the right.
Yeah.
That it is his right to be able to date Zoe.
Yeah.
And so, of course, after he kills her dad, that's their obstacle. It's gone. Yeah. Everything will be hunky-dory.
Fine. And that is how he's a member of this generation too, where like that is how you solve your problems.
Yeah.
You shoot the people who annoy you on Purge night.
And then once Purge night's over,
everything's great.
Have a good evening. See you later. Yeah. See you at the potluck. You know, we see shit like that all the time. But like he's just so controlling in their relationship. In a way that makes me my god, the part
and I'm happy he dies.
I'm so happy he dies. I wish Zoe got to kill him.
But hold on, many things. Does James kill Henry?
He shoots him and he bleeds out
and dies from those injuries. Okay,
yeah, that's our understanding. So I think we don't really see him die.
Right? No, we don't. Yeah, that's a weird thing.
But I think we're meant to think that Zoe is with him when he dies.
Yeah, because we're just meant to see him and Zoe go away and not be in the area anymore. Because we need to like lose Zoe so that she can be found with the bloody stranger, right?
Yeah.
Another really big criticism that like I understand, it's like horror movie logic. It's like stay together.
But I know that it's Purge night. Yeah. But at this point, Zoe has not been informed that there is somebody inside their house. She has every reason to believe that her dad's security system from his company where he works is protecting them. So the only thing she needs to worry about is like what just happened with her boyfriend and her dad, which is like enough for a teenage girl to have to deal with. Yeah. So why wouldn't she right away? You know?
That's true. Like, go back to her room.
Yeah. I don't think that is unlogical in the way that, you know, horror movies, sometimes people are unlogical. Yeah. I think that is a perfectly reasonable response for a woman to have. Yeah. A girl to have to that situation. Yeah.
So I'm also upset that she doesn't get to kill Henry, but she does kill the polite leader.
And I love that for her.
Because I love it for her too.
Because like, it's not enough that she's like a 16-year-old girl in America, which is already really bad. Yeah. And she's living in the Purge and like her boyfriend's dead because her dad killed him because he tried to like, she's been through so much. She got held hostage. Yeah. But then it's like, and the polite leader needs to say creepy things about her picture.
Yeah. And like, and says like, save her for me.
Like, yeah. Has she not been through enough? Yeah. So, I know everybody's having a bad Purge, but like, come on.
Again, it's just like, you know, it just continues to feed the idea that like she is like constantly under threat of sexual assault.
I know. No wonder she made that response to Charlie's story. Like, yeah, of course.
So that is a nice little like vindication for Zoe as a character. Like she gets to take down this polite leader who is the main villain in this movie. Like he's the main antagonist. I know that the neighbors are antagonists as well. Yeah. But like, I mean, it's really,
but they're kind of like a twist antagonist at the end.
Right. I did think about that with you. Did think about you and like our talk of twist endings.
Oh yeah.
What episode was that? I don't remember.
Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp. Yeah, the twist endings. How we kind of have like we kind of have two twists in this movie.
Yeah, we definitely have the neighbors.
The neighbors is a twist, and then the bloody stranger coming back at the end, I think is also a bit of a twist because I forgot about him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about him. And I was like, oh yeah, the bloody stranger.
I actually misremembered from my last time viewing this, where I was like, oh yeah, and then they team up with the bloody stranger and take care of all of the polite leader and all of his people. Yeah. But no, the bloody stranger is just gone for all of that.
He's gone. He's hiding for most of it, which I get.
I know. Yeah, he does not need to do anything.
The bloody stranger, once the polite leader's already dead, then the neighbors come, right? And then it's the bloody stranger who like helps get things under control enough for Mary to be like, enough.
Yeah.
Sit down.
We are done.
And shut up until 7 a.m. Yeah.
Which is what she wanted to do since the beginning. Just have a nice, quiet Purge night.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like the bougie woman she is. It's what she deserves.
Are we ready to talk about the polite leader?
You want to know? Yeah. Should we just get into the polite leader?
So I just need to like full disclosure immediately. I find, so this actor's name, his name is Reese Wakefield. And the fact is that like that man is very attractive.
He's very your type. I will say that.
He's crazy cute. And like he has a very charming and disarming smile.
He does have that.
Yes. And he does seem to like know how to talk, how to hold a polite conversation.
Yes.
And like if that man like came up to me at like a party or some like function that we were both at, and he started to engage me in conversation, and he smiled that smile.
Oh yeah.
Probably my defenses would be down.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Because I feel exactly the opposite.
Wow. Yeah.
But you know, I don't like men as much as you do.
Yeah.
But but beyond that, no, there were just so many. Honestly, even just his smile was such a red flag for me.
It's creepy. Yeah. Exactly.
And and his way of talking, there's so many things. There's so many moments in his speech where I'm like, oh, buddy.
Oh, no. He's saying awful things.
No, not even just that. Not the awful things he's saying. Okay, this is like so petty of me.
Yeah.
But this made me hate him more than any of the violence he committed.
Wow.
Which is when he says, "Send out he, or that will be thee." And like, I get it. He's going for the rhyme, making it fancy. That is not how grammar works.
Okay.
Like he is a subject pronoun, and you really wanted like more of an object pronoun. You wanted like send out him. Like no, it's like it was just such a moment where it became so clear to me that like all of these trappings of like elite, privileged, private school, big college, whatever, is like such bullshit.
Total bullshit. Yeah.
Like he's trying so like too hard to be this fancy lad.
Yeah.
And he's not. It's like fake. It's like such a facade.
It's all a facade.
It's so fragile.
Yeah.
Like, because he sounded so stupid in that. He sounded so stupid, and he had no idea because he thought the fact that he can say shit like thee, makes him better than other people.
Yeah.
And actually, no, it makes him so fucking stupid. Exactly. That's how I feel about the legislature.
Totally. Within the context of this polite leader.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrifying. Yeah, totally the smile is very unsettling. Yeah. Absolutely. But like I could just imagine in like in this world in which there's a purge on like another day of the year, running into this man and having like his, probably really charming. No,
because he's still going to be using words like guys and thee and condone and like nah, man.
Yeah, and
you think you're so much better than people, and I hate you.
And talking about like. What he says is like in reference to the bloody stranger talking with James is like, was his life worth yours?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, polite leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, it's not even the things he say because, of course, those are bad because he's a villain.
Yeah.
And like he's like the symbol of Purge. Yeah. But just like the fucking way he talks just fucking irks me.
But, and also, I haven't mentioned this yet. I love that. His character is the polite leader. He doesn't get a name.
No.
Same with the bloody stranger.
Yeah, he gets a name later.
That. Oh, he does?
In later movies.
Oh, okay.
He's Dante Bishop?
Oh, the bloody stranger.
Yeah.
Yes, because that character comes back.
Yeah.
But the polite leader,
but the polite leader never gets a fucking name. And he doesn't need one.
He doesn't need one. Yeah, I love it. And like what an amazing villain.
Yeah.
Like what a like visually striking.
I love a villain who is just, a rich white guy.
Yeah, because
a rich young white man. Like, yeah, that's what villains look like.
That's what villains look like. Yeah.
I also, can we talk about the mask thing?
Yeah, let's talk about the mask.
I mean, already there's like, masks are such an important thing in Purge, which is like this funny, again, this sort of dissonant thing of like, purging is supposed to be this good, important, valued thing, but like we need to wear masks to do it.
And like disguise ourselves.
And it's like, are we like trying to separate ourselves? Like this is my dark alter ego and then I can go out the rest of the year? Or like, are they hiding themselves so that people won't know that they did it?
Right.
But then like the polite leader's mask specifically, is it just his face?
It's just his face.
Like what?
Like I think and because everyone's wearing the same mask.
I was so confused.
I think it's literally just his face.
I wasn't sure if they were all wearing their old. I don't know. They all just look like white people. I don't know. Same mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just like it's such an odd choice to make.
Yeah.
It's such a like. I mean, I guess if it is all his face, it's such a cult leader move to make.
Totally.
But this thing of like, I want to be seen, but I don't want to be seen.
Yeah.
But you can see me. And I'm like, is it because? I mean, it's creepy. It's like scare tactic.
Yeah. Definitely.
But it also like hides any hesitation that you might have, or like any moment when he lets his polite leader mask slip.
Yeah.
Like that moment where he gets so upset because one of his fellow college kids is rude.
Yeah.
And he yells a little bit and he fucking shoots him because like we don't condone it's that I excuse racism but I draw the line at animal cruelty community meme, or it's like I can excuse racism but I draw the line at being rude to our social equals.
Kind of equals, yeah.
Yeah.
Much more equal than the bloody stranger.
Yeah.
Totally. And he does say,
yeah.
this is what he says, like when he's introducing himself to the Sandins, right? And he's like, what is he does use like such fucking flowery poetic language. Like, we are a group of highly educated, fine guys and gals.
Yes.
And he says that they are dressed up in, this is the quote, their most terrifying guises.
Yes.
And they're dressed up in like prep school uniforms.
They've got like their nice blazer with their little college crest on it.
So what does that tell us about what is terrifying in this world?
Yeah.
Right? Highly educated white people.
Yeah, because they're the people who are purging.
They're the ones who are
They
purging.
are not the victims. And it's just like...
Yeah.
Also, though, back to the gender roles thing.
Absolutely.
Why are the girls just wearing like, it looks like kind of like matching white tunic dresses?
Because I think they're supposed... It's interesting that you said cult leader. Because like they are supposed to give a Manson vibe.
Right?
They're giving Manson girl vibe.
Like they're so...
And that's not my original thought. Many people have said this.
Right. And I just... Yeah, the like gender dynamics there are so weird in a way that I don't quite understand. It's because it's also like they don't... a lot of the college guys get like guns and stuff, and the girls don't even get guns.
They have like machetes.
Yeah, and like an axe. Yeah. So it's like, where's the gender equality in murder?
Right,
come on,
of a gun.
Why don't they have
America?
Like, why can't they be highly educated in their nice blazers?
Yeah.
Or like, and like even skirts, but like no, they are wearing these these culty Manson girl dresses. It's weird.
Yeah. And they are acting in like very like Manson-y ways.
Oh,
like,
they're fucking...
they're frolicking and dancing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like play acting, slitting their own throats.
Yeah.
And I also actually kind of love them doing the like cheap lesbian makeup thing with the masks on.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. But it's also this kind of like, I don't know, it felt kind of like this like meta awareness moment where like they know that they're putting on a show for the Sandins inside.
Yeah.
You know, like they're going to do all of the like exploitation film schlocky shit that they're going to have the lesbian make out. They're going to do all the sharpening weapons and stuff because they know they're performing.
Yeah.
Because it's a game to them.
Yeah.
Purge is a game for them.
And they're waiting because they're like, okay, with what we have right now, we cannot penetrate the security system, but we have reinforcements.
Yeah.
And they will be here.
So
you have until then.
So we're just going to enjoy ourselves and like enjoy Purge night because we don't need to fear anything because we're not the people who need to be afraid on Purge night.
Yeah.
And it's really actually kind of funny how honestly sort of easily James gets to just like take them basically all down. James almost I mean, the neighbors come in and like save the day at the end, but James is doing
and Zoe gets the polite leader.
Yeah, but James is like,
by my count, actually I wasn't keeping count, but he kills at least 3 purgers.
Yeah,
if not more,
which is like a lot for a random person.
Yeah,
you know,
in one day. Yeah.
And I just sort of was like, on the one hand, I was like, damn, James, you were ready to commit some violence. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I was like, these kids probably never imagined a world where people would fight back against them.
Yeah.
They probably didn't do anything to prepare for this.
Nope.
They just never... I mean, there's the guy who's just sort of like following around watching Mary and has had multiple opportunities to just fucking shoot her dead. And he just doesn't because that's not what they're here to do. Because they're not afraid of anything.
No.
Which, what a world.
And I almost wonder if they really, truly don't necessarily want to hurt the Sandins.
Yeah.
But will, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, because they are the same social order.
Yeah. Kind of. That's the thing. Is that,
I do think they're
more
above,
wealthy. And I think that's what's happening with the neighbors too. Like the neighbors are upset because the Sandins have made all this money.
They're upstart crows,
off of them, right? Yeah. And now the Sandins are now in a higher socioeconomic class, maybe closer to being equal with them, and they're just like, oh no. You're still below me.
Yeah.
I'm higher up on the socioeconomic hierarchy.
Yeah.
And how dare you even consider trying to move up the socioeconomic hierarchy past me, you know? And I think that's happening with the Purgers and the polite leader as well.
Yeah.
It's like, you're closer to my equal. And like, obviously everything that the polite leader is saying is like this dog whistle of the fact that the bloody stranger is black.
Oh, I know. I had to write down some of the things because he talks about him being a dirty homeless pig.
Yes. He calls him a dirty pig a few times.
Yeah, he calls him a grotesque menace.
Yes.
He says that he had the audacity to fight back and killed one of our O's when we were attempting to execute him.
Yeah.
Of course, they get to execute this man, but when he fights back, that's like killing.
It's a murder. Yeah.
And it's the pig doesn't know his place.
Yes.
He needs to be taught a lesson.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, so you can commit murder, but when this homeless black man kills somebody in defense, like suddenly this isn't purge night anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
that's not cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And he specifically says that, like, so we can purge as we are entitled.
Right. And I noticed that. It's like, it kind of goes with, like, to what extent do our main characters in this film really, like, buy in to the ideology of the purge? And I feel the same way for the purgers. Like, do they really feel like the Sandins are denying them their divinely given right to purge?
Yeah.
Is this really akin to a religious experience for them? Like, are they doing this, again, like, as a religious experience, or are they just, like, entitled little brats who think they can do whatever they want?
I think, you know what?
Especially if they put it under the guise of, it's my divine right to purge as an American.
How I got it, because you have to think about, so if this is like maybe the fifth-ish purge, that means that they spent the first few purges were when they were in college. So like they are growing up, like what I'm getting at is like they kind of just reek of like the Leopold and Loeb thing of like the Ubermensch of like, how could they not think that they are the most specialist little boys who can get away with murder?
Yeah.
When like society is telling them that they are the most specialist little boys who can get away with murder.
Exactly. They are being fed this stream of propaganda.
Yeah.
They probably have family members in the NFFA party.
Right.
You want to think about it that way, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so they've got this steady stream of propaganda that the Purge and the NFFA is like rooted in Christianity, and that the Purge is inherently a religious experience. So whether they actually believe it or not, they don't really give a fuck.
No, but I think what they do believe is that I think they do believe that they are entitled to purge because they are better than everybody else. Yeah. I think that is absolutely, like, just because, I mean, it's the idea, you would think the idea of purge, but as we keep getting at, like, it's supposed to be this sort of night of anarchy. Right. Where like
hence the title of the second film.
In an odd way, it should encourage a sort of equality, or at least like a survival of the strongest.
Yeah.
But like that's not what happens. It's the people with the most societal power.
Yeah.
The haves.
Yeah.
Who really get to be the victors on purge night. And so it's like, it no longer is about purging your own aggression. It's about putting others, quote unquote, in their place. Because they're really doing is they're, just like the neighbors are, they're trying to ensure the hierarchy of their society. Mm-hmm. So it's not like grand anarchy, debauchery, or whatever. It's like, it's all a fucking scam. You know?
To keep the system in place and working as it's meant to work.
And I think the polite leader and his people are bought in on that and believe that that is right and good. Mm-hmm. You know? Because, he has all these things that's like, you know, don't force. Yeah, they say we don't want to kill our own.
Yeah.
Like, that's not their goal.
Right.
But like we can and we will because it's our right.
But like, what do they mean by our own? Do they mean like
white people? Or do they mean rich people?
What they mean. I think they mean white people.
I think white people and rich people are the same thing to them.
Right, like poor people and people of color are the same thing.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know how much they've examined their own thoughts about that.
Probably,
but they are all white.
They are.
Interestingly, with the neighbors who are slightly lower, they have some.
There's a little bit of diversity. Yeah, there's like an Asian man and a black woman.
Yeah.
That's what we get.
Yeah.
Right. And there's actually something about The Bloody Stranger that we haven't mentioned yet. And I'm going to be honest, I don't actually think I caught it in my first watch or maybe even first couple watches. That The Bloody Stranger is supposed to be, he's wearing dog tags.
I know.
He's a vet.
He fought for our country,
right?
America.
And so that's a really interesting little twist on, the polite leader calling him a dirty pig.
Yeah.
And like a scourge on society. And I was like, he's a fucking vet, dude.
Yeah. Like,
that means nothing though.
No.
I think again, like there is just the inherent racism in the system that like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think like in our world, in this version of the United States, being a vet does buy you some clout, I feel.
Sometimes. I mean, but at the same time, like the way that we treat our vets and like...
Right. And the rate of homelessness among our vets.
And like mental health and like health in general. Like, and it's like, it's always like you fight for your country and then what does your country do for you?
Exactly. Yeah.
And like, well, that varies. It depends on how much you already had and how much your country cares about you, But it is like, you would think in this like very America first sort of mindset that we have in the Purge.
That we would uphold our veterans.
Yeah.
And that there would maybe be better systems in place for...
But at the same time, part of the Purge is that like we don't do war anymore. We dealt with war, though I wonder about that because they list that as one of the problems that was in society before the Purge, so, which implies to me that war isn't a thing anymore. But I could see in a world like the Purge there being a lot of war because you need to go spread American goodness everywhere. So I don't know. We just don't know really what the system is there.
Yeah, right. And the Bloody Stranger has very little dialogue.
No.
He's absent for most of this movie.
There's one thing where some of the other college kids, they're in the credits, they're all called freaks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So one of the female freaks says, no one will miss him when he's gone.
Oh,
And like...
You don't know that.
But the movie really does make you kind of believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, he was with somebody when they got attacked because they killed one of them and then he fought back.
Yes.
So maybe he has people in his life. We don't really know.
Yeah.
He doesn't say much. We don't really know. We only know that he's a vet because we see his dog tags.
Dog tags, yeah.
And, we don't get a name for him.
We also don't even know if he's homeless.
Yeah, we're just going off of what the polite leader says. I mean, it's not...
trust him.
I would hope if you had a home on Purge that you'd
be able to be in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if he isn't homeless, then something bad happened.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Yeah. He is so interesting. And he is the first one to say that like, I don't want to die and I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
And why won't anybody help me?
Yeah.
Which is such a like fundamentally opposed view of how a society should function, I guess.
And then the polite leader says to James, was his life worth yours?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, that's like a fundamental like moral understanding of the value of a life.
Yeah, like all lives
matter, Katie. I'm kidding. Right, like somebody like depending from like the polite leader, yes, there is like a hierarchical.
Yeah, some people's lives matter more than
more. Yeah, but then like for other people, and while we understand and like we live in a society where there are like social hierarchies, we kind of understand at the end of the day, like humans are just humans.
Yeah,
and we are like. Is that like part of a Maya Angelou poem? Like we are more alike than we are unalike.
Yeah, and
like our lives are equal,
right? Yeah, and it's just wild that the only people to actually say, hey, yeah, they don't deserve to die is this person who we're being told is like the lowest member of our society, and a child who we're supposed to told is like just doesn't understand, doesn't know enough. These are the people that are getting ignored, because our purge system, it doesn't really think about how this is going to help the people who are being killed. It only cares about how it's helping the people who are already in power.
Yeah.
It doesn't think about what would be good for those sort of people. And those sort of people
it doesn't matter because they're there to die for the purge.
Yeah. Right? And I do think it's so well... I think it's a real well done in this movie. How they set it up so that we have... Like, you're talking about it being a home invasion film. Yeah. So we're set up with this, like, unknown black man. Who's, like, this lurking possibility of violence. Even though, at that point, the only people we've actually seen commit violence are, like, the white people. Yeah. Like, it's Henry who shot at, his girlfriend's dad and stuff.
And the Bloody Stranger is, like, yelling, asking for help.
Yeah. And it's like when he is in the house, he still doesn't really have any power to do a lot of damage. Like he has to hold somebody hostage to do anything. Yeah. And he doesn't want to. He just wants to be left alone.
Yeah, he just
and
wants,
be safe. Yeah. The only reason, like he would have just hid out in Charlie's safe spot probably until Purge was over.
Yeah.
If Zoe wasn't in there. But like he can't do that. And it's just so it's like we have this black man, this stranger, who only has the power to lurk and be scary, but he doesn't actually have the power to do anything.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really
He's
astute.
Actually one of the bigger victims of a thing like the Purge.
And of course, he doesn't actually really care about the rules of Purge night whenever he's talking about like, this is what happens on Purge. This isn't what happens on Purge. You don't do this. Because it's like every night for him is probably a Purge night. Really?
Maybe. Yeah.
In a way. Because like if he is living on the streets, he's not safe.
Yeah.
And also, any crime that he commits will not be forgiven, probably even on Purge night to a certain extent, because he'll have people coming after him constantly, forever.
Yeah.
So it's like, why shouldn't he hold a child hostage? He's defending himself in the same way he has to do every fucking day of his life.
Yeah.
And
he is also, like, even when he gets in the house, like, he's not safe in the house. Like, the Sandins have been threatened.
Yeah.
And so James is like, well, it's him or us, then, like, I'll go get him,
Just to go back to the polite leader for just 1 second, just because I think it's relevant. He has this one line he has where it's just sort of like, it's not what he means, but he says that they are ready to violate, annihilate, and cleanse our souls. And it's just sort of like, I know it's not what he means, but it makes it sound like he's trying to annihilate his soul.
Oh.
You know, we're ready to violate, annihilate, and cleanse our souls.
So all three of those things for
that's not how he means it. He means those as separate things. But his sentence structure is bad because he's actually not very smart. No. No, but and I think that is just sort of like, that's what Purge is. We have these people who are bought into the Purge and they are annihilating their quote unquote souls. They're not being moral.
Yeah.
They're thinking that this kid helping somebody who's in danger is like a bad thing to do and wrong, and that this guy does deserve to die. Mm-hmm. And then the people who are like not buying into the Purge are the people who are like doing the right things.
And it's, again, the issue of race. Like the fact that he's black is like what's making him a huge aspect of what's making him a target for these purges, right? Again, like, what's a life worth? Was his life worth yours?
I think that's part of what you were getting at with how James sort of like maybe wouldn't say it, but will buy into it, where he has this thing where he talks to the bloody stranger and he's like, we didn't do anything to you. We don't deserve this.
Yeah.
Without having any sort of thought about like, oh, but the bloody stranger
could he not
does
say the exact same thing?
And also then is it like, oh, so then what you're doing to the college kids by like denying them their right to purge, this is you, like it's okay for them then to come in and purge you because they are following the purge rules when they're on a night when there are supposed to be no rules. Like, and the stranger is straight up like, I don't deserve this either. And James doesn't really listen to that. He's just like, well, you're going to die tonight. So either you die like a man and walk outside there by yourself, or you can die like a coward and get my wife and children killed along with you. And it's like, why, James, do you think it is considered like brave for this man to go accept his death?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be brave for him to fight back against it?
Yeah.
Like, what about that?
They could fight together. They got guns.
And like, why is it brave then for you and your family to fight back, but not him? Like, what's the difference here, James?
Yeah.
What's the difference between you and him? Tell me that.
I can see one pretty big difference.
Maybe even two pretty big ones. I don't know.
Oh, James. But so that's the other thing is that like James kind of being like the main protagonist kind of.
Yeah.
He's like barely likable.
Oh, yeah, no.
He's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
You know? And like we meet the family and like we build the relationship and like we feel for them, you know, but like James is kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's something that they do better with later in the series.
Mm-hmm.
It's just having more
protagonists.
Yeah. And people who we can root for a little bit more, and people who are like more staunchly against the Purge. We see more of that.
Well, absolutely. But I think,
and then we also see more people going out to Purge because they have somebody specific that they want to kill,
they got
which is also fun, but a different thing.
Well, yeah, and I think like the point of this first movie is to like ask those questions about morality.
Yeah,
right. You know?
That is its goal,
and have less than likable characters.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's okay to not like every to not like your protagonist.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And, it is also think the main antagonist is like super cute.
But I do think that's something that's really cool about the series, and even though other people might not agree with me,
right,
is that there's just so many opportunities for so many stories and so many like moral quandaries to think about that are so relevant to our society as it is, where you have like all that entitlement stuff coming from all these rich white people and like the idea that some people have the right to purge and others don't. Well, some people have a right to home and others don't. You know, like it's just like there's so many connections that you can make.
And some people can afford like tens of thousands of dollars worth of a security system.
Yeah.
And some people
can't. Yeah, and like rich people law is different than poor people law, and like white people law is different than black people law, and it's like that's true on Purge too. On a night when there's supposed to be no laws, and somehow these rules still apply.
And that is something that's true in the version of the United States that we live in.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Should we just talk about how everybody's wrong about this movie?
Right. So here's the thing: just this film, I haven't looked at the rest of the franchise. Has a Rotten Tomatoes critic score of 40% and an audience score of 36%.
Damn, that's low.
It's low.
That's lower than I thought it would be.
It's really
and
low.
I knew it was low.
It's low. But here's the thing. The box office tells us a different story. On opening weekend, The Purge tops the box office. They come in first in the box office on its opening weekend. Opening day, the movie makes $16.8 million. Opening weekend, $34 million. Overall, domestically within the United States, $64.5 million. Internationally, almost 25 million.
Okay.
So like over 91 million grossed worldwide from this film. Do you know what the production budget was for this film?
I know it was really low because they're all in just one house the whole time.
Yeah. It was $3 million.
Damn, they made bank.
They made some bank, right? And yeah, so the production budget is low because they're in the house. Honestly, a big chunk of that was probably just like getting Ethan Hawke and Lena Headey.
Yeah, actually.
Honestly, yeah. Like
it was certainly considered a success.
Very much so. Certainly a financial success, which is literally all it takes to make a sequel.
And not
if
just...
it makes enough money, they'll greenlight a sequel.
And not only did this movie get a sequel, it got like...
It's got a franchise.
It's got like so many sequels.
Yeah.
And it got those really quickly.
Yeah.
Plus 2 seasons of a TV show that nobody, even fans of the series...
don't
seem
love
to like that much.
Yeah. That's how I feel about it. Yeah. So, but it's my understanding, and box office isn't something I normally pay attention to.
I know.
This was new for me.
Numbers mean nothing to me.
Exactly. It's my understanding that they got a really low budget. They made a ton of money off of it, right? And so, and that box office numbers is overwhelmingly what indicates whether a movie gets a sequel.
Yeah.
Or what happens with the IP after that. Yeah. So it's just so interesting because it made a shit ton of money.
So
and
obviously people are seeing it.
People are seeing it and yet not really seeming to enjoy it, or at least critically.
What's interesting... Yeah. I was seeing this thing about how they had a hard time getting it out there originally, and it it premiered somewhere else before
a festival. Yeah.
Because they had some test audiences who I was just reading this thing from James DeMonico talking about it. The test audiences, I don't have it in front of me right now, so this might be a bad paraphrase.
Yeah.
But the idea was that basically there were a lot of people who didn't like it because they thought people in America wouldn't like it because it was kind of like too heavy-handed with its political message.
Sure.
Like it would be too much.
Yeah.
But it did well with people of color who saw it. They liked it.
Yeah.
They picked up the message.
Yeah.
And there was also a subset of people who watched it and thought, this Purge thing sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, also that. Yeah.
That group of fans.
Yeah. What was I looking up? Something about I was looking up the script for the public service announcement.
Oh, yeah.
Like there, you know how like when you Google something, it's like people also search for, and they're like, is the Purge real? What states is the Purge legal in? And I'm like, oh God, I cannot believe people are Googling this. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, which kind of leads me to believe that like maybe a function that movies like The Purge serve is just kind of like brainless junk food, like media junk food. Like I want to see like this movie where all crime is legal for one night out of the year, but then even though people are wanting to consume this and they're going to the theater, it's making all this money. Like at the end of it, they're just like,
right.
Not very good, So I don't know. I think there's just like some need for like the junk food.
And I also just think like a junk food take on this movie is like the most boring way to watch it. If I was just watching it for the violence, I would be pretty bored. Especially with the first one. And later ones they amp up the violence. They
really do.
So maybe, So but I do wonder how much it's like kind of people not misunderstanding, but not. I don't know. You continue. You have more thoughts.
So that's one of the thoughts I had was like, I think the reason why people insist that this franchise is stupid is because like they are not analyzing it with a Marxist lens.
Sorry. I love you.
like get Marxist with it.
And then it's real fun.
And then it's fascinating. It's a rich text, right? So this is off of Rotten Tomatoes. The main critic response is like, half social allegory, half home invasion thriller, The Purge attempts to make an intelligent point, but ultimately devolves into numbing violence and tired cliches. So that's kind of interesting. It's like, it's like trying to make an intelligent point, but devolves into numbing violence and tired cliches. And like
that's part of the point.
And that is part of the point. And I also don't necessarily find, because I watch a lot of violent films, like I don't necessarily find this Purge movie to be that violent.
God, no.
Especially when we compare it to movies later in the franchise.
Yeah, but also just other horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that violent. And also, really though, I think that's such a key part of its message is that The Purge encourages violence in everyone.
Yeah.
It is not something that like cleanses people of violence by getting it all out. These are people who would not be committing violence otherwise, but now they are because of the purge. Like, that's a whole part of the message.
That's the whole part of the message. So even though the purge was, like, by box office measures, a commercial success, it's still not really a critical success. And
I feel like it's not really a popular success, despite the fact that it is in box.
Right. Critics and audiences all kind of have a lot to say. It's mostly revolving around a quote-unquote illogical premise.
That okay. I want to say one thing about that.
I want to say several things about that.
Well,
I also have some more critic responses.
Okay.
So on IO9, Charlie Jane Anders describes The Purge as a clunky and implausible political screed in movie form. I don't know what that means. Screed?
Just sort of like a long going on sort of talk, speech, writing, something like that.
It's like a monologue. It's literally a 90-minute movie.
Yeah.
The Tri-City Herald, Gary Wilcott says, he describes the movie as almost the dumbest movie in history. My recommendation is Purge, The Purge from your weekend movie plans.
That wasn't even clever. Do better.
Come on, Gary. Yeah. Rex Reed from The Observer says, let me tell you, let's see how you feel about the cleverness of this.
Okay.
Demonico clearly hopes to make a significant moral statement on the level of Shirley Jackson's literary masterpiece, The Lottery. Alas, his aims at political conservatives who support the gun lobby falls flat before he can pull the trigger.
Oh,
see what he did there?
Gross,
see what he did there? Yeah. See what Rex did there? Yeah.
That's funny he thought of The Lottery. I thought of, well, I'll get to my thought.
Okay. From Real Views, James Durardinelli says, when critics bemoan the dumbing down of movies, they are talking about stuff like The Purge.
Like it's too obvious or something?
Too obvious? Yeah.
I don't know.
And then someone named Neil Young from The Hollywood Reporter said, gimmicky Chiller lacks the robustness and distinction needed to support its social commentary ambitions.
Wow.
So I have...
Several sequels say otherwise.
I have some rebuttals. Sounds like you do too.
Only just about the idea of like... I just think when they talk about it being unrealistic, they're like fundamentally misunderstanding it.
Yes.
Because like,
they're not analyzing it with a Marxist lens.
Because they want to talk about how like the purge could never work in the real world or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, it doesn't work in the movie The Purge either.
Yeah.
Like it isn't functioning as the propaganda is saying. Yeah. It is functioning. It's not how the people in power want everyone to believe.
Yeah.
Like, and like, yeah, most people in the purge world itself do not want to be enacting that level of violence.
Yeah.
But are pushed into it by the propaganda and the circumstances they are in. Like, I think people want to read it as, like, they said The Lottery. I thought of, like, Those Who Walk Away from Homeless by Le Guin.
Yeah.
Where it's, like, this utopia with one horrid secret or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But that's not what it is because it's not a utopia. This movie isn't saying that the purge is, like, functioning. Like, I don't, like... It's a failing... This movie is showing us a failing society that is, like, falling apart, and it's using bread and circuses with, like, an emphasis on a circus that fucking kills people so that they don't have to have as much bread for people.
You did it. Well done.
Like, yeah, so the idea that it's, like, unrealistic is, like, that, like, this wouldn't happen how it's supposed to happen is, like...
Duh.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not happening how it's supposed to happen. Like, that's the point of the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm also, like, I just take umbrage with... the criticism of a quote-unquote illogical premise. It's like, yes, okay, girl, then I guess...
It's called fiction.
The Matrix, Star Wars, Barbie have illogical premises.
It's called fucking fiction.
Yeah. And it's like, yes, if you do think about the logistics of this world that the Purge lives in, if you think about it too hard, it does start to fall apart.
In various places.
It's this thing that doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
So does Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's fiction. It's literally fiction.
Yeah, they didn't think out. And that's, I think, part of what makes this a fun movie to sort of play around in is because you can think about all those little places and all those other things and the implications of it. Yeah. Like, we have fun doing that.
Right. So
that's part of why we love this movie is to think about all those other implications of the things that they haven't really thought out because the movie only has 90 minutes.
Exactly. And it gets it done in 90 minutes. And so other movies take note of how much you can get done in 90 minutes. But what also gets me is that, like, you know, a lot of the critic response is like, oh, it's trying to do this, but falls short. And it's like, first of all, it's one movie.
Yeah.
And, like, we're establishing this world for the franchise, right? And, like, that's the point. Like, it's so funny because they're like, you know, the critic response is also like, oh, it's a little heavy-handed, it's a little obvious, but then also they're like, oh, but it
doesn't get its message across.
It doesn't get its message across. I'm like, okay, well, which is it, man?
Yeah.
Because, like, what I really like, especially with a movie like The Purge, where it's, like, the first in this franchise, they're putting us, like, just dropping us in the middle of this world, and it's up to us and the audience to, like, figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And, like, and those unanswered questions, then we can think in our own brains and fill in the blanks ourselves.
Yeah.
Which then makes it a more effective story.
Yeah. And I think that is why people who do enjoy The Purge, or like, the interesting thing about The Purge is that there are a lot of people who are like, oh, Purge is like one of your favorite series? That's weird. Yeah. You know? But they're also
like, oh, those movies are so bad. I'm like,
but they're also so ready to be like, but what would you do on Purge night?
Right.
That's always one of the first questions. They like, because it is fun to think about, because it's like,
it's a little thought experiment.
It's a thought experiment. And that was like kind of the idea of the movie, is to be this thought experiment and to make some thoughts, you know, and to make some points about our American society as it exists, you know, and as it could exist.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
It is fun. Like, not everything needs to be like, I don't know, what's like a super like artsy fartsy movie? I don't know.
I mean, even just in horror, not everything needs to be like Midsommar.
Yeah, not everything needs to be Midsommar.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, like, look at Friday the 13th. There's like 10 of them.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, so that's kind of, again, like, goes with what I think is happening with the box office success of at least the first one, is, like, there is a demand for this kind of media. Like, we want to see some, like, random shit in, like, this dystopian alternate dimension of the United States.
Yeah.
And then we, like, it's almost kind of like a purge. Like, I want to experience this, but then pretend like, oh, it was stupid. Oh, it tried to do this but failed.
Yeah.
When, no, actually, I think the movie's incredibly successful in what it's actually trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think it sets out to do something and it does.
So all of those critics I just named, you're wrong. But it's funny because some of these reviews are like from 2013.
Yeah.
Like when the movie came out. And so it's just like, you know, maybe those critics I named, like maybe they've changed their mind. I don't know.
Who knows?
Anyway.
Or maybe they haven't given The Purge a single other thought.
Yeah, or haven't watched it again since. Yeah. Well, they're missing out.
Yeah, because it's a fun world to just sort of dip your toes into.
Yeah.
And splash around and have some fun.
Especially when it comes to the law.
Purge law!
Purge law!
Purge law! I mean, I think we've talked about how Cabin in the Woods was sort of like the inspiration for this podcast.
Yes.
However, Purge law.
But also Purge law.
Was also a driving thing, because there were so many times when I would just randomly, like, we hadn't even watched Purge recently, but I would just text Erika like, Purge law! What's going on with this?
Yeah. I just realized, what about this situation? Yeah. So when you say Purge law, what do you mean? Just so that we're very clear.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is what we're doing instead of a game to end out our episode. Purge law is just sort of like, in a world where we have this night where where everything is legal. Yeah. The law is everything is legal.
And there's also a pause of emergency services, right?
That can't actually be true. Or like, we see that it isn't actually true.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is the actual law around Purge? Yeah. Are there Purge lawyers to deal with the fact that sometimes people maybe committed a crime while the final siren was going?
At 7:01.
Yeah. And like, you need to be like, oh, a witness saw this. Or
6:59 p.m. before, you know.
Yeah. And like, my favorite Purge law to think about is like, okay, well, what if I gave somebody like a poisoned muffin on Purge night, but they didn't get around to eating it until the next day?
Yeah.
And then they fucking died?
Yeah.
Is that a convictable crime? Am I going to jail?
Yeah.
Because I committed the crime on Purge night.
Yes.
But it happened. So it's like, ooh, what are the Purge lawyers doing? Like, that is my job in the Purge world. I want to be a Purge lawyer.
And that's the thing, is that there is probably a new section of law, Purge law.
Purge law.
Like, if there's this huge new economy around guns and security systems, certainly law has to catch up with it.
Because, what do you do about those crimes that have consequences that last beyond the night of Purge.
Yeah.
Somebody starts a wildfire.
What if, again, what's the rule about, like, kids? Are kids allowed to purge?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to, like, commit violent acts against minors?
Oh, and then my other question is, like, what do you do with all the fucking orphans that are being made by Purge night? Because it does seem like some people, whether or not you're allowed to purge kids, it seems like a lot of people choose not to because they don't want to hurt kids.
Right.
Like, that is just a thing that people don't want to do. But because we see things where, like, whole families, except for the kids, get wiped out. And, like, so what do you do with those orphans?
Or kids kill their parents.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, probably what this world does is they take really crappy care of these orphans so that they can grow up to be next year's Purge victims.
Basically.
Yeah.
This is, I wonder about kids, absolutely. And then
I think they've had it's been, like, unclear in the TV series. There have been some parts where it's like, kids are immune. And it's like, are they actually, or is that just sort of like an unofficial rule? Because it's not in the opening little, like, all crimes are legal. Yep. Only people exempt are the government officials of
ranking 10 or above.
Whatever the fuck that means. Yeah. Which they never explain.
No, they never really do explain. Not even in election year when they're like, hey,
everybody's free game.
Everybody, even government officials ranking 10 or higher.
Yeah. And I think they try to touch on it on the kids and the TV series, but they don't really explain it.
Because to me,
satisfactorily,
because they're doing that in order to hope that Charlie Roan will be murdered.
Yeah.
So then she would be rank 10 or higher. So basically, like, people running for president.
But is it because she's a senator?
Or a senator? Yeah. So, like, so people in the government.
But then it's like
in lawmaking within, like, the legislative branch.
But then it's
or executive, I guess.
I don't know, like the head of education, are they exempt? Like,
could I kill Betsy DeVos?
Yeah.
I know she's not
the
head of the Department of Ed anymore, but, like, could I?
Could you have?
Could I have? Yeah. Exactly. So but then which tells me that the NFFA is holding that one rule in place in order to, like, avoid a coup.
That, and also I think holding it in place because, I mean, if you wake up and your fucking head of transportation or whatever is fucking dead, that's just gonna create so many fucking problems in, like, the functioning of your society, and, like, it's gonna be a big fucking issue,
which seems to be barely functioning anyway,
as much as they say. And see, I feel like all these questions we have, these purge law questions that I so enjoy doing, are like part of the complaints, all those critics that we were talking about, like, they're like, it doesn't make sense, and it's like, it's the part that I love, is thinking about these things, like, what is dental insurance like in the Purge world? People be losing teeth on Purge night.
Yeah.
Do you have Purge insurance?
Purge insurance is a thing.
Yeah.
We find that out in the second one, and we understand that it's incredibly expensive and, like, cost prohibitive for
most people
of color who own businesses.
Yes. Right? Yes, you're right, we do.
Because honestly, like, when people have what would you do on Purge night? Like, I'd probably go steal some stuff.
I mean, my first response is always, I'd die. I'd probably be dead.
I would die. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what else to tell you, dude. I would probably die. I can't defend myself.
But, like, or in, like, a situation in which there is no law prohibiting my behavior.
If we're thinking about the first Purge where Marissa Tomei predicted that actually violent crime wouldn't be that high. Yeah. Because it probably wouldn't. Yeah. It would be things like people having sex in the street and having big ragers and doing a lot of drugs and robbing ATMs.
Drinking in public.
Robbing the ATMs and stuff. Like, in that kind of world, like, I'm going to pirate some shit from the comfort of my home, you know?
I'd probably, like, go to, like, fuck Walmart. I'd, like, go to Walmart and just, like, get
some fucking food. Yeah. I could have all my toilet paper needs met for the whole year on Purge night. Yeah. So, like, here's my big question, though, about Purge law. Is, like, how can this system of the Purge sustain itself for more than a decade or two, right? Because eventually, wouldn't we run out of poor people? Well.
Or does this economy keep creating more poor and vulnerable people some way, right?
I think so.
If crime is legal, are people released from prison?
That is one of my questions,
Purge law, could someone break out of prison, or could, like, a CO help prisoners leave prison?
Yeah, that would be so a good thing to do on Purge night.
Would that be allowable?
Yeah, just fucking open up all the doors. I mean, but also we're supposed to think that there aren't a lot of people in prison because crime rates are so fucking low.
I'm not buying
which
it.
I don't buy it fucking all. If prisons are empty, it's because they're executing people.
Exactly. Yeah. I could totally see this world where like our political system is run by the new founding fathers party, right? I could totally see that government keeping huge populations in prison all year to keep the crime rate artificially low because anything the rest of the year you're going to prison, right?
Yeah.
And then letting them out
to
wreak havoc on Purge night in an attempt to make the Purge look more successful than it actually is.
Which is something we explicitly know they do in the first Purge.
Yeah. But they're not doing it with letting people out of prison. They're doing it with like paid mercenaries.
Well, and they let people out of prison because Skeletor
I don't think he was in prison. I thought he was.
Oh, was he recently released from prison?
Maybe. Yeah.
Because they definitely interview him while he's still in prison.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that's true.
Okay.
Because they want violent people on the streets.
Exactly. Yeah.
But also, most of the people in our prisons are not violent offenders.
This is true. Yeah.
So you let out the people who are in our prisons right now?
But if you put them like in Purge world.
Yeah.
If you put them in prison and like God knows what those prisons are like.
Oh, yeah.
Again, with the steady stream of propaganda.
Yeah.
Like, feeding violent tendencies.
Yeah.
Then, maybe you release some prisoners on Purge night and.
I mean.
There is an uptick in violence.
We talk about like releasing prisoners as something you could like freeing prisoners as something you could do on Purge night. I could also see a lot of people going to prison specifically to kill prisoners on Purge night as like a righteous purging.
Right.
Of the worst people of our society.
Maybe. Yeah.
I could see prisoners being another highly targeted group of people.
Yeah. This is like the train of thought this movie produces for us.
Yes. And it's fascinating.
And like what we were talking about yesterday off mic, we're like, what I'm noticing is like people making all the same points I want to make about the Purge, but instead of being like, they're like, whatever. Yeah. It's not that good. Like, no. We think the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's a positive and you find it neutral or negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know my big Purge law question that came up when I was watching this time?
Yeah.
It came once again from that newscaster over the credits, which I just really got into this time. Where he says they are turning people away from emergency rooms in Brownsville as there is simply no more room. And he's talking about how it's such a successful Purge night and stuff. But it's like, okay, so there's all these people who have been hurt on Purge night and need to get into the hospitals and they can't because they're too busy. How is that not criminal? Like, if people are dying after Purge night ended.
Yeah.
And therefore laws against murder are in effect.
Unless emergency services are privately owned now.
That is a question.
Right.
And it's, I just sort of like wonder if you like survive up until the siren sounds and then you succumb to your wounds.
Yeah.
Can your attacker be charged with murder? To say nothing of the institutional violence of a lack of adequate healthcare.
Right, yeah.
Like, how is that, and it is. I don't know. They want to say that this is like a dumbing down of the movie or being too heavy-handed with its message. But the idea of talking about like healthcare in our society and how it isn't equal. I don't know. I think that's a cool thing to explore in a horror movie.
Yeah,
and to do
Saw
it
6, you guys.
And to do it just sort of subtly in the credits as just sort of like, this is also an element to think about.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that James DeMonaco and everybody else involved in this film were thinking about it a lot and did a lot of cool a lot of heavy-handed things, honestly.
Yeah.
But a lot of more subtle things too. And it's just like fucking cool, you guys. It's fucking cool.
Here's our thesis that we've spent the last 2.5 hours talking about. This is a good movie.
Yes.
And a good franchise more generally.
Yes, because this is honestly probably the worst of the franchise. Though I did enjoy it a lot more this time around than I ever had before.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait. Maybe I like this one a lot.
You know what? Because I haven't said this yet. I just so thoroughly enjoy Ethan Hawke. He's a good actor. And he does really well in this movie. And he's also in another really great horror movie, Sinister. He does a great job in that too.
And I also love his cameo in the TV show.
That was so good.
It was a really clever
service.
It was great. Yeah, I loved it. And I love Lena Headey, and I think she's really great in this.
Yeah.
And so, that's why The Purge is great, and you're all wrong. So fucking deal with it. Yep. I don't know what else to tell you. Look at it with a Marxist lens. So there you go. I don't know. And this has been Deep Thoughts, Shallow Plots.
Yeah. Up next month. It's December.
Woo!
So we're going to be watching the classic 1974 version of Black Christmas.
You can follow us on Instagram at Deep Thoughts Shallow Plots, all spelled out.
As always, thanks to Matt, our sound guy, Matt.
Yes, he went through it. He really struggled, but we got it all together. He persevered.
Yep. And until next time, don't forget, we're going to play the rest of this night out in motherfucking peace. Does anyone have a problem with that?